It is now 7:01. Do we have, everybody please take your seats. I'm going to ask for a quorum count. There'll be a brief presentation from the School Facilities Committee, and they promised to make it only 10 minutes. I haven't said anything yet. We're saying. Do we have, are all the attendance folders out? Okay. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 has 7. Precinct 2. 11. Precinct 2 has 11. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 10. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 16. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 has 11. Precinct 6. 15. Precinct 6 is 15. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 has 7. 11. Have to keep it down. There's too much background noise. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 6.
Yeah.
There are,
I have to move this way now.
Am I having a brain?
That's right.
a quorum is 75. There are 88 present. Will you please rise and join me in saluting the flag?
That's currently before any of these articles.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. I left something out.
As amended.
You want to do it again? I don't have a teleprompter.
That explains a lot. Get rid of the liberty.
Well, maybe we don't have it anymore.
That explains a lot. Thank you. That's what's before this article. That's what they put in the budget.
What's that?
You're not going to incur any of this until next year.
Did we have always the list of everything going back to the time that had...
Who controls the volume of this thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's there or not.
I don't think it's in there, because I was looking to check.
I can't remember anymore.
It is low. I mean,
I was engrossed when I was looking at something for that project.
I don't see. Is this loud or? No, it's not. I get a terrible echo in the background. Yes.
You guys.
At this time,
I know what you mean.
I have been requested by the
She wants to dismiss it, or
by the School Facilities
the town manager?
Committee
Okay.
to make a brief presentation, and I'll start the timer so that there's no conflict about whether we got 10 minutes or not. Are you ready?
Just come to that mic and say,
Mr. Recupero?
like to dismiss this article.
Mr. Moderator, thank you, and through you to your body.
There's no
Members may recall in prior town meeting that appropriated for the purposes of a new high school building was funds for a feasibility study. Over the past year,
thanks.
a high school building committee has been appointed, has been hard at work, and has gone through a series of steps, the first of which was to appoint an owner's project manager, which we did several months back, and we've hit, I think, what you would call in the business... Sorry? I think what you would call in the business that we're doing is the next big milestone, which is the selection of an architect, which we have gone through the process of and accomplished last week. So, and I do want to be brief, so I'm going to talk quickly. What we thought we would do, and with the moderator's permission, is come before you and give you a brief update where we are, give you a cast out of the next 6 months or so, perhaps even year. You can see a timeline on the slide behind me about where we're going to go over the next 12 months, and also introduce to you several, the members of the building committee, which you'll see up there in the left-hand corner. If you have any questions, comments, there will be plenty of opportunity for input, which you'll hear about in the coming months. But this is, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, a grand kickoff for us before the body that started it all with the appropriation of the feasibility funds. So with that, if I can pass off to Superintendent Rizzi.
Good evening, everyone. As Mr. Recupero said, the school building committee has been meeting. We will be meeting at 5:30 on Thursday, this coming. Do you know where that is? Oh. Okay, never mind. That meeting has been canceled. But the meetings are regular and are posted and are open meetings, and everyone is welcome to come. And they are also broadcast on SMAC for those folks who might be interested but are not able to come. So we have hired an owner's project manager, and this is a requirement of doing a project with the MSBA. It was an excellent process. We had 4 very competitive firms to choose from, and we selected Compass, and 2 gentlemen from that firm are here this evening to talk with you briefly. So I'd like to introduce Tim Bonfatti, who is the leader of our owner's project manager corporation.
Thank you, Dr. Rizzi. I want to introduce Dom Taberi, who is the project manager that will be working with me on the project. For those of you who haven't worked with an owner's project manager in the past, our job is to represent the town during the whole process, from the start of design through construction. So our job is to make sure the project stays on track, both budget, schedule, scope, that the program that the school department needs to have a fully functioning high school is implemented, and then during construction to make sure that the quality, that the highest quality standards that the town expects are implemented. So our role is as your representative in these projects. Our other big part of it, aside from keeping the project on track, is to manage the Mass School Building Authority process, which they will be contributing a large amount to the project, and obviously as a financier, they want to have a say in the process. So everything we do along this process is done in conjunction with the Mass School Building Authority. There are 2 other critical members of the team. One is the architect, who I is going to say a few words in a second. The next will be the construction manager or general contractor. We haven't decided exactly which way we're going to go with this project, and they obviously haven't been hired yet. But amongst the 3 of us, what we want to make sure is that we deliver a first-rate project, and that's our goal starting out, and that'll be our goal when we come back to report on the success of that in 3 years. So I'm going to introduce Kyle Franceschi from the design firm of DRA, who was just selected last week for the project.
Thanks, Tim. We're very excited to be back in Stoughton. DRA worked on the townwide facilities assessment about 5 years ago, and I remember appearing before this august body back then, and we're very excited to be back on this project for the high school and working with your wonderfully hardworking building committee, the strong project management team that's in place, and we're going to be spending a great deal of time early on exploring a lot of options. We come with no preconceptions. We're going to spend, as I say, a concerted amount of time getting input from yourselves, from the school department, from the school committee, and others. You'll please keep your eye out for some workshops that'll be advertised where we'll be seeking input from a broad variety of folks in town. And ultimately, our goal during this feasibility study schematic design is to develop the most educationally appropriate and fiscally responsible solution for Stoughton. So thanks for having us.
So So I'm going to very quickly walk you through the timeline that the project will bring us to the next town meeting and the vote for authority that is required under the process. So as I mentioned, we've hired the architect. The next deadline we have is in September, after going through the summer, both investigating the multiple options as well as developing the educational plan that the school department is looking for the high school. This report that we submit in September is called the Preliminary Design Report, so it does lay out the educational plan. It would lay out how the building would respond, or any building would respond to that educational plan, and it will list the options. So we will know however many that is, and typically it's many options we would be looking at. We need to inform the MSBA of that in September. The next big deadline is called the Preferred Schematic Report in December. We issue that to the MSBA. That is, as it says, as the name says, basically the preferred solution for the school. So through the course of the fall, we'll be looking at narrowing those options through a process, a very deliberative, analytical, and fact-based process to get to the preferred solution for the school, which will be packaged into a report to the MSBA. As you can see, the MSBA board, the red circle, the oval, is the MSBA board vote in January. That's the first of 2 votes that they take in relation to the project. And that vote is an approval of the preferred schematic that is submitted in December. Through the course of the winter and into the spring, the architect will be working with us in the school department on completing roughly about 25% of the design. It's called the schematic design phase. And that results, ultimately that gets estimated, and we put a total project budget together. And that project is the project scope and budget report, which is submitted in April to the MSBA. That lays out the cost of the project. It details the amount of MSBA reimbursement, so the net cost to the town. It has a schedule, and obviously with 25% of the design, it lays out the scope of the project. That report is worked on by the MSBA staff and is voted on in May of 2016 at the MSBA board meeting in May. So when you look at May and June of next year, a year from today, that is when we would expect to come back to this town meeting and present the report and present the preferred schematic, as well as all the financial and the deal, if you will, with the MSBA. And seeking your approval here at town meeting, we would then be ready to go for the debt exclusion, which is required under this process. What we would be looking at is a time frame right now, sometime in early June. So that's the schedule we've laid out. It's an aggressive schedule, but it's one that we are very confident that we can achieve. And we're very much looking forward to working with the community. As Carl mentioned, there are going to be numerous times for the community to hear about the project, numerous times to participate and let your feelings be known about what you want to see in the project. And that's going to start with the community forum, actually June 6th. So we're looking forward to it. And with that, I'll turn it back to TJ.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you also to the moderator and to the members for your patience. Really don't want to hold up town meeting anymore, but we thought that this was an important step in what will be, as you see, a very aggressive next year for the high school building project. And thank you again.
Is there any other business that needs to come before we officially start on the warrant articles?
Mr. Moderator, I got a point
Mr.
of-
Cohen,
point
Mr.
of
Cohen.
information. I know we talked about 48. Is it on? Mr. Moderator, I know we talked about 48A and B. Is that scheduled for the 18th? Or is,
It's still scheduled for the 18th. If we get done everything up to that point, 45 is also, there's a couple things there. We'll take them on Monday and maybe not have to come Wednesday.
Okay, so it is scheduled for next
And
Monday.
all our commitments have been,
Okay, thank
and
you.
a lot
sir.
of people have said they won't be planning to come in on Wednesday anyway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator.
All right. I think that, actually, it's 1:02. We begin tonight with Article 21, which is on page 102. And Mr. Hill.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to defer to representative of the Board of Assessors.
You need to make a motion. And- What's that?
Going to dismiss him.
You're going to dismiss, oh,
Thank you. Deborah Roberts, Precinct 6. The Board of Assessors would like to dismiss Articles 21 and 22.
let's do one at a time. One article at a time.
The Board
On
of
an article-
Assessors,
Go
I'll say
ahead.
it again. The Board of Assessors would like to dismiss Article number 21.
Okay. On the motion to dismiss, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is carried. I'm going to say it's unanimous to be dismissed.
The second, the Board of Assessors would like to dismiss Article number 22.
Thanks, Deb.
I just- On the motion to dismiss, all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. I'm going to say it's unanimous, and this is 5/7/19. Okay, we come up to 23. Mr. Hill.
That the town vote as authorized by the provisions of General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41A, to increase gross receipts from $20,000 to $40,000 that a taxpayer of 65 years of age or older may receive and still qualify for an exemption under the Clause 41A, and approve Article 23 as written and printed, and the printed warrant.
Do I have a second? On the discussion. Any discussion? 1 second. Getting ahead of ourselves. No discussion on it? No explanation. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Majority? I'm going to say it's unanimous. And today is, Article 24.
That
Mr.
I'm sorry. That the town vote to transfer from Article 23 of the annual town meeting of May 2010, the sum of $2,309.03, line 161 through 6316, to transfer from Article 14 of the town meeting of May 2004, the sum of $437.04, and to transfer from Article 14 of annual town meeting May 2001, actually, not 19, the sum of $47,253.93, and approve Article 24 as written and printed in the warrant. I'm sorry, a correction, that's May 2009, not 1. There's an extra 0.
Any comments? This was submitted by the request of the Recreation Director. Mr. Dennison, wish to speak? Okay, I just want to recognize you if there's anybody has any questions. Mr. Murphy.
Peter Murphy, Precinct 2, Municipal Operations. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Mr. Dennison. My question would be, is this is recreation. How come this isn't coming from CPA money?
If I may,
Mr.
Mr.
Hartman.
I can answer that. Before this article was submitted, we checked with Town Council, and Town Council said no, it is not eligible for CPA funding.
Has there been any change since that conversation?
None.
I thought the ruling, there was some somebody had looked into the ruling, and there was some chances that it could be coming from CPA money.
It could, the ruling was that if it were part of an overall project to rehab the entire park, that it could in fact be included. But if it's just the building and the storage area, which this is, it cannot be included.
So you're saying that we are better off tearing down that building and going for a major project?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm telling you what Town Council said, that unless it's part of an overall redevelopment plan for Ames Pond, if it's just a building project, then it's not eligible for the Community Preservation Act.
Is there any plans in the future to do anything of that nature for Ames
I'll
Pond?
defer to John on that one.
Mr. Dennison?
I have no plans at this moment for an overall renovation of the entire Ames Pond Beach area. Some of that may depend upon other articles that get acted upon here at this town meeting. But at this point, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Morton?
John Morton, Precinct 3, and I'm chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I would just say that this article wasn't brought to us. Had it been brought to us, we would have considered it. Under the law, as we have understood it, we cannot use CPA funds for normal maintenance of recreation land, like mowing or repairing a roof or something like that. We can use it for capital improvement projects. A piece of this project is a capital improvement, a piece of it is normal maintenance and restoration, and basically, putting on a new roof. So it had not come to us, we did not consider it, but I understand the view of council, which was obtained not through our committee, but through the, I guess, the Board of Selectmen, that this was more a maintenance problem than a capital improvement, and it couldn't qualify for CPA funds.
Mr. DeFelice?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's kind of perplexing that we can't use CPC money for this bathhouse for the use of the residents of the community, but we're going to be asked to use CPC funds for a dog park. I don't get that. Are dogs more important than the people that want to use the pond? Ames's?
Mr. DeFelice?
Yes, sir.
That comment is out of order. Any further discussion? Because this is a transfer of funds. We do not have to have a supermajority, just a regular majority. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'll declare it voted on a voice vote, unless 7 people want to challenge it.
Thank you.
$7.25, okay. On Article 25, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the purchase of a complete salt brine system, including but not limited to a liquid tank and spray bar, including all incidental and related costs, and approve Article 25 as written and printed in the warrant, and as funding therefore to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Batchelder here. Well, I think maybe we should know what it is. Mr. Zamarian? If you want to ask him, he's coming down.
Sorry, it took me a while, Mr. Moderator. I did a little research on this salt brine system, and it's being used regularly in the state of New York in particular, but other states as well. Pre-treating the roads, from what I have read, and I grant you I'm reading information from municipalities in New York, dramatically improves the efficiency and the safety of those people using the roads. I don't know whether you'll vote for or against this, but from the information I gathered from this, this is a smart move by our town. I understand there's a little bit of an investment, but all improvements require some investment. I just wanted you to know that I did do due diligence. I looked through various writings from various states, and all have had efficiency improvements anywhere between as little as 22 to as much as 30% as far as their folks being able to clean the roads and keep them safe for us, especially in the colder conditions, which we all know we've had plenty of. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you,
Mr. Batchelder?
Well, first, I'd like to thank the previous speaker for his hard work, and I agree with him. The salt brine system for the town of Stoughton is another tool in the toolbox. As of right now, we do very little pre-wetting unless we're absolutely positive that we have snow coming, and you know how things are in New England. It can change in a matter of minutes. The thing with salt brine is it's very, very cheap to make. We can make it for probably about 18 cents a gallon. It goes on the road, we pre-wet with it, it dries on the road, you can put it out a day or 2 days ahead of time. It just gives you that extra added time to be able to get a crew out and keep the roads safe. But as I say, it's relatively cheap to use. The other liquid we use, which is a mag chloride, does not dry. And if instead of snow it turns to rain, it goes down the drain. And at the price we pay for that, which is over $1 a gallon, it's gone. So this is another tool for the toolbox. If it works out well, we may come back at some point in the future to look to put a tank on a second truck, but we're starting off with one and see how well our investment would pay off. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice?
Mr. Moderator, through to the super. John, there was a thing, I think it was last week, it may have been on Chronicle, that talked about the manufacturing of the brine. And one of the things they talked about, I think they have a place in Bourne, I think it is, that they manufacture. Sagamore. Okay, that sounds right. And they were talking about relocating or establishing, not relocating, I guess establishing new facilities in the western part of the state where it's obviously more useful than we are, although we need it too. The question basically is, John, given that information, have you heard anything about, is there going to be a problem of availability of brine in the area if they're going to start manufacturing out in the west part of the states, or is it just a matter of getting it transported?
Well, this is to make our own brine.
Oh, so we won't be getting...
We're not going to haul brine in.
So you're going to...
We're going to make our own. There's actually bigger systems than what we're looking for, but we're planning on making our own. The brine system can give us enough to fill the 3,000-gallon tank, fill a holding tank as well, and as we're pumping it off for the second load, we can actually be making more and stay ahead of it. So we're planning on making our own. So the only way that wouldn't happen is if we didn't have any salt. We've been pursuing that. Every year we have more than one vendor. We do whatever we need to do to get salt in our yard. Even the years that it's been lean and very tough to get, we managed to get it.
So if it became a problem, one of these manufacturing facilities would probably be a backup for you then, if worst came
I
to worst?
suppose it could be, but I'm hoping to look, if it's looking well, maybe we can be the one that some other towns might want to come to. Maybe we can offset the cost by selling some.
Thank you.
Ms. Walsh.
Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. I move the previous question.
As to cut off debate, if this is not unanimous, I will have to take a standing count. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Was that on the motion, Mr. Moderator, or the cutoff debate?
Oh, all right. It was to cut off debate, but also, if anybody has any problem on the vote, I thought I was. Okay.
On the motion.
Just so I have an attendance record, please. All those in favor, please stand, and the chairman will take a count. The reason I wanted that, I seen a number of people come in, so I wouldn't want to count. Even if it's everybody in the room, I'll have a number. We're rushing too fast. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 has 12. Precinct 2, Mr. Delinsky. Mr. Delinsky. Precinct 2 has 14. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 11. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 17. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 15. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 17. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 13. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 7. All those opposed, please rise. Good. I'm going to declare a 0 for every precinct. So 106 yes. I'm going to say that's unanimous, but I have a number for our attendance. I knew 106 yes, 0 no. I thank those people for filling in their seats. It's unanimous.
106 to 0.
It's now 7:35.
One more time.
All right. We're going to argue. I have a, Yep. Okay. Article 26, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the design, purchase, and installation of a variable frequency drive on the water pump motor control system and the Gurney well located on Plain Street, including all incidental and related costs, and approve Article 26 as printed in the warrant, as written in the printed warrant, and as funding, therefore, to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow the sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapters 44, Sections 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes, therefore.
I hear a second. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? I will declare it unanimous. We won't have to take an attendance count. And what is the time? 7:36. Article 27, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for research and design of a water pressure booster station to increase the water pressure to the north end of Stoughton to the state-required 30 psi, including all incidental and related costs as proposed in the June 2006 Water System Master Plan, and as funding, therefore, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow said sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
Do I hear a second? I didn't. Mr. Zamarian? Zamanian. I'll get it right.
It's okay. I just have a question for whomever this pertains to. Once this model is put together, how long before the application becomes a reality? In other words, how quickly can we get the problem solved?
I wish I had an answer for you. Everything now that goes through DEP generally takes a lot of time. I would probably guess maybe 2 years.
How long will
This
it take?
has been a long time problem.
I know it has. I live in the area. That's why I'm asking.
It affects everybody from the Low Ave area all the way up Golden Road area, all the way to North Stoughton. And it's something we've discussed a number of times. The plan is to remove the Oakland Street standpipe, which is the oldest one we got. That's why we didn't repaint it. We want to take it down. And hopefully this booster station will make things a lot better for the residents in the area and all the way up through North Stoughton.
So just a quick question. Would that eliminate one of the two water lines we have on the street if this did go or come to fruition?
Not necessarily, no.
No. So you may still use the same line. It would just be...
That's correct.
You take down the tower and put the station in.
Right.
How long is it going to take the model to be built and analyzed?
Well, I think, I'm hoping that if this gets approved, that we'll have something possibly, if we have a special or the next annual to come back with.
Okay.
And then, once that happens, we can, we're off and running.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Any further discussion? If it's not unanimous, we'll have to take into account it is a borrowing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, I will declare it unanimous on a voice vote. 7:39, right? Article 28, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to transfer from sewer retained earnings the sum of $90,000 to replace with high-efficiency pumps those pumps at the Queen Anne and Beaver Brook wastewater lift stations that require replacement, including all incidental and related costs.
Is there any discussion? If not, this is a simple transfer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, I'll declare it unanimous anyways. It is now 7:30, 7:40. Mr. Hill, Article 29.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $300,000 to continue improving the sewer system and reduce infiltration and inflow of groundwater and water from other sources, including but not limited to investigation of sources of water loading from rain leasers and/or sump pumps and all incidental and related costs, and as funding, therefore, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow said sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapters 44, Sections 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. What is a rain leaser?
lesser, whatever.
Third line.
It should be leader with a D. Rain leaders.
Is that a typo?
Third line.
Yeah, that's rain leader. If I may, Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Batchelder.
town meeting has been very good to us over the past 10, 12 years in regards to I&I. We've solved a lot of issues. Hopefully, if this gets approved, we will be able to take a couple of years off as far as coming looking for more money. It'll get us through our whole program, and we'll be starting over again as far as some camera work and going through all of the areas that we have done to see where we need issues taken care of in the future, but hopefully you won't see us back for any more money for a couple of years.
Mr. Hill.
And just a note to that, the town will need to borrow the $300,000, but we get reimbursed from the MWRA for, John, I think the reimbursement rate on this is around 75%. So we're just borrowing it and we'll pay it right back. So our cost on this is going to be $75,000, not $300,000, just to let you know.
Any further discussion? I'll say, on the motion, which requires a 2/3 vote. If it's not unanimous, I'll have to take a standing count. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'll declare it unanimous. The time, 7:44. All right. Since this is a recommendation to refer to town meeting, I'm going to ask, all right, I'm going to ask the town manager to bring something up.
We move to dismiss Article 30.
Motion to dismiss. You can discuss it, but if nobody wants to discuss it. On the motion to dismiss, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'll declare it unanimous. That's how much? 7:40. Moving right along. Article 31. Mr. Hill.
That the town transfer from sewer retained earnings the sum of $50,000 for the cost of preparing a hydraulic sewer model for the municipal sewer system, including all incidental and related costs.
This is simply a transfer. There being no discussion on the, Mr. DeFelice, I'm reading too quick here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Could someone at least tell us what this is and why we need it?
Mr. Tisdale.
Good evening, Mark Tisdale, Town Engineer. Essentially what this does is it gives us an analysis of our entire sewer system. It tells us where all the pinch points are, any surcharge manholes. So essentially when a project comes to town, a sewer extension, and they're saying, oh, we're designing our project, it's going to this manhole, we can quickly look in this analysis and say, well, you know, the pipe just downstream needs to be upgraded also. So it's really a tool for our town to use in reviewing sewer projects.
Okay. Thank you. Once again, it would be nice to have explanations for all of these articles. The committee doesn't want to do that, but that's fine.
It may be.
Page 157, Mr. DeFelice, in the back
Smith.
of the book, there's a reference in the appendix that speaks to this. It's already 122 pages long, and there were public hearings.
Mr. Smith.
Mark, is this a real or a virtual model?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a real model. This modeling software, they input all our existing GIS data that we have. There's also obviously some criteria they put in, and then they run the numbers, and it tells you where the pinch points are, it tells you which manholes are being surcharged, if any. It's a pretty nice
So it's
tool.
not a true, this will show up in a computer as a virtual model rather than real.
We'll actually get an actual report, but we'll also have the model too, the analysis model. So
Okay.
we'll have a report and a map and a model.
Okay.
Mr. Murphy.
Peter Murphy, Municipal Operations, through you, Mr. Moderator. These articles have been brought for public hearing. A lot of discussion has been had by all committees. We have put a lot of time into these. We have asked a lot of questions. I realize you respect our opinion, and there are times for question, but it is open for discussion at public hearings prior to town meeting. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Incidentally, there is reference material in the back, and maybe as I usually do this myself, possibly, and when they're editing, make a notation at the foot of the article in the warrant that there is material in the back. No, it might be difficult to put a page number, but at least say that it's in the back of the, so at least, right. Any further discussion? On the motion, which is just a transfer, simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I'll declare that it was unanimous. Time, Mrs. Carrara, 7:48. Article 32, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for costs of transportation improvements to the Central Sewer and Pleasant Street intersection, including all incidental and related costs, and as funding therefore to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapters 44, Section 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore. Just a note, there's information on the reference section on page 158 on this item.
Mr. Mullen and Mr. Coleman.
Bob Mullen, Precinct 2. Just curious, since we're spending a lot of money on traffic improvements, I'm just curious, when you see bills come out from the State House, I always see other towns referencing. I never see Stoughton. So I'm just wondering why we're not kind of getting our piece of the pie from the State House too. Have we asked our state legislators for some support on these projects? We shouldn't have to go alone all the time on this.
Yeah. So to answer your question, we have been in discussions, and essentially to get any funding from the state or the federal government on transportation projects, the town has to pay for design plans. Once the plans are designed, you're eligible to, excuse me, to go on the TIP process, which is the Transportation Improvement Program. And that's usually about a 4 or 5 year process, sometimes longer. And that's how it gets funneled through. But the town has to pay for the design costs. And we actually have 3 projects being queued up for the TIP right now.
Well, can I just further ask you, in the back of the book that you referenced, I think 157, that looks like design costs back there, right?
Right, so this
is like the actual improvements?
Right, so to back up a little bit, there was some priorities that the task force in town looked at for intersections. The Central and Pleasant Street was one of the higher priorities. Typically, TIP projects, you're looking for bigger projects, things that cost, $1 million or $3 million, the redesign of an entire intersection. We looked at this one as being something that was better to fund by using town funds, because for $50,000, we can make a huge improvement to the intersection, making it much safer, The task force essentially, we reasoned out that this is mostly a crash intersection. It's unsafe. The police have plenty of police reports on it, and they have their input on this, and they also back it up. So, for instance, one of the improvements on this intersection is providing a dedicated left turn lane traveling westbound. That's going to be huge, because vehicles have a hard time actually finding a gap to make those left turns. By providing a left turn lane and the arrow to give a lot of the time to the vehicle has enough time to get through because there's no cars coming. Right now, you have to kind of wait for that gap and then shoot across, and a lot of times you get those head-on collisions. So it's going to make...
No, I do agree that these improvements are needed.
Yeah.
Just, come out of our own pockets all the time. I mean, I think, at least in the back of the book, it looks like we already paid the $75,000 for the design. Is that my correct reading
For
of that?
the Central and Pleasant Street article, we're asking for $50,000.
For the design?
For the actual implementation.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
No design.
There's
On
no
Central and
design in
Pleasant
this.
Street, that's all set. Now we're going to be buying the equipment with this article.
Have we
Doing the
even asked our
improvements.
state reps for any support or anything? I know it's small money, but still, I see, when you read the bills come out of the State House, it could be $25,000 for this town, $100,000 for this town, $10,000 for this town. I never see, at least some of the bills I've been reading recently, I never see STOUGHTON, Stoughton,
Yeah. Again, one of the documents is the TIP program, and you'll see there's a lot of projects queued up on it.
Right.
But again,
So we're in there
they're
somewhere?
They're waiting for us to do designs, and that's
Okay,
that's the
I'll
tough
leave
part.
it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Batchelder?
If I could just add to that, Mark's looking for money for the lights and so forth, but the painting of the intersection has been done. It was done last night. It was done with state funds. They have given us money for certain things. We have to jump on top of it because it's got to be done by the end of June. This is the extra money that they've given us for potholes and line painting, and there's a variety of things that we can use it for. And the intersection was painted last night with state money.
Bless you.
Mr. Coleman?
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. I went to a couple pizza parties that Autumn Ridge had sponsored, and they offered to pay for this. I don't know, how would that affect this article? To town manager or finance committee? It was an offer to pay for it. Is there somebody here from Autumn Ridge that can confirm that? Or are they?
Yeah. Yeah, in the event that project goes forth and the planning board does impose that as a condition, then we would come back to town meeting and ask that this article be rescinded.
Or perhaps not borrow the money and use their money for it and not rescind the article.
If they were going to do the work, we would not need the appropriation.
Well, I don't think they're going to do the work. They'd pay for the article.
No, my understanding is that they would do the work. They would do the traffic improvement.
Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice?
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Just jumping on what Eric said, could I direct a question to the town planner, if she's here? Come on down.
What's the question? Clock's burning.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Time's almost up.
Okay.
Hi, Noreen O'Toole, Town Planner.
How you doing? Sorry for the long walk. My question, Noreen, is I went to the same meeting with Eric. I think we were sharing pizzas at that meeting. But anyway, I'd like to ask you to what your read is on that. I heard the same thing, that it was offered that these developers would pay for that. Could you elaborate on that? Maybe you have more information than any of us. It's not water.
Her
I'm asking a
boss has
question.
just answered the question.
She has a yeah.
No.
He is asking a question of the planner. Now a time to respond.
It's a difficult question to answer because it hasn't come before the planning board as of yet. And even if it does pass at town meeting, it does come before the planning board. Town meeting really should look at this article and vote for it and approve it, because we can't not vote for something pending what's going to happen at another board.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindwall?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Forrest Lindwall, Precinct 5. You've heard a lot about the task force, and I thought I could maybe do a little bit of clarification. Transportation Task Force is just an ad hoc committee that was formed by the previous interim town manager in response to a pedestrian incident. And basically it includes the police department, fire department, school department, public works, a planner, town engineer, and a couple of volunteers like myself. It also includes, it has incorporated people who are involved in looking at bicycle routes and that type of thing. And we meet 3 or 4 times a year, and we've developed a list of priorities of intersections or whatever. This particular intersection was the very first thing that was mentioned by the Traffic Transportation Task Force as a priority. And the reason that we're looking at it as a small chunk of change, and I know 50,000 is not small, is that if you go through the TIP process with Mass DOT, that's the Transportation Improvement Program, first of all, it would be a minimum of 3 and more likely 5 to 6 years. You would spend probably $125,000 to do a full board design, and then Mass DOT would pick up the project at a cost of maybe $600,000 or $700,000. These are simple projects, simple improvements that can be made that will alleviate a whole lot of traffic congestion. I came out of the YMCA last week at 7:45 in the morning, and traffic was backed up on Central Street at the Y all the way through that intersection down to Central. So this is a real simple, easy thing to do, and I hope you people would support it. Thank you.
Ms. Walsh?
Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. I got the same handout you all did, and it does say $50,000 in recommended traffic flow and safety improvements to the Pleasant and Central intersection will be paid by Calamar as recommended by the town's traffic consultant. So I would move to table this until Monday when they're here so we can ask them about it.
I hear a motion to table. It requires a majority vote. No. Looking at all these different things. Requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Of table. No.
All those opposed?
Well, they made the motion to table. All those in favor of tabling, say aye. All those opposed? No. I will say it's still on the floor. Did Mrs. O'Toole want to respond to that?
I just wanted to respond to just the philosophy in general. The planning board could, develop an agreement with the developer, and this could be part of that development agreement that they would give the town $50,000 for the traffic study. But this has not even been voted at the town meeting for the zoning overlay, first of all, and it's not at the planning board. I think that we don't want to miss doing this work by tabling something and not voting on it, because this is something that's needed in Central Street. This is one of the most dangerous areas of the town. And I'd hate to see us table it, not get an answer, and then forget about this, and then have to wait and just delay this project.
Mr.
Okay,
Murphy.
so you're not tabling it. Good. You're going to vote on it. All right, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to that.
Maybe I should have come up sooner. Peter Murphy, Precinct 2, move the question.
That's a cutoff debate. And if this is on those, all in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, approved? Geez, we only just started and we're already getting punchy. On the motion, this is a borrowing. As if there's no objection, I will not take a standing count. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I will declare it unanimous. As a comment on that, I understand whenever we do projects like this, we have to have the funding approved by town meeting anyways, whether or not somebody else picks up the tab. So, that's just information. Mr. Hill, on Article 33.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $80,000 for the cost of roadway inventory and condition assessment, including all incidental and related costs, and as funding, therefore, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow said sum pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore. And Mr. Moderator, there is a reference in the article reference tab on page 159 on this.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mark?
Mark Semanian, Precinct 1. I got to ask the question, why do we not have a working assessment of our roadways?
Mr. Batchelor.
80 grand's a lot of money, folks.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We have an engineering firm that has done a road survey for us, but the amount of money that we gave them did not include everything that Mr. Tisdale is asking for tonight.
So we've had a road and condition assessment done already. When was that done, please?
2 years ago, Tom? 3 years ago.
But it was incomplete.
It's not, doesn't include sidewalks, traffic lights, signage, a number of different things.
But why doesn't the DPW keep a working record of what needs to be repaired in the town?
We do, as far as the road survey itself is what we're using right now. I mean, that's the other things. That we have a number of areas where we have crosswalks that go to nothing because there's no sidewalks on the other side of the street. There's a number of different issues that we have. We're just trying to make sure we can get everything under control.
So the DPW maintains or an assessment of the condition of the roads, but not the sidewalks, signage, things like that. Am I correct?
Well, we do. I mean, we have our own sign program, but
Okay.
it does not mean that unless we physically put somebody out there to go through the whole town and look at the signage and what we have and what we need and what needs to be replaced. That's where this comes in, because as of right now, I don't have enough bodies to go out and do something like that.
So you're saying you don't have the labor to go out and provide this assessment for the town?
That's correct.
And we don't have an up-to-date or current assessment of the signage and that sort of thing? Because it hasn't been done, correct?
It hasn't been done for several years.
It's just a lot of money to ask for something that I would have thought as a townsperson would have been regularly kept by the men maintaining the roads, or women maintaining the roads.
Well, we do quite a bit of it. I'm not sure exactly what else Mr. Tisdale had in his plan for that. I don't want to speak for him, but I know that as far as what we are paying for, it's all road work. And the concern with us is what roads we need to maintain. They let us know where we need to do the crack sealing, where we need to do the full depth reclamation, an overlay. It's a regular maintenance program.
Okay. Yes. Believe me, I don't belittle what you folks do. I see you out there every day. You work very, very hard. What kind of guarantee do we have that once this assessment is done, it can be maintained by the DPW in the future?
Well, I got to tell you, what we do right now, our sign shop is manned by our highway crew on basically on days it's raining, and we're not putting them out on the road to do another job. That's when we work in the sign shop.
So is there a plan in place that once this study is completed, it will be continued to be updated and maintained on a regular basis so we don't have to come back 2, 3, 4 years down the line and ask for this again?
Yeah, I think that's a safe assessment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Any further discussion? If not, that's the only discussion we've had on the motion, which is to appropriate the sum of $80,000 and to borrow said sum pursuant to the general laws 44, 7, and 8 as printed in the warrant. If this not be unanimous, I will have to take a standing account. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I will declare it unanimous. How much you got, 808? Mr. Hill.
Article 34, recommendation that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the cost of transportation improvements to the town square, including all incidental and related costs, and as funding, therefore, to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum pursuant to General Laws, Chapters 44, Sections 7 or 8, and any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore. Second?
I heard a second.
And there is additional information on page 160 in the article reference section.
Mr. Morton.
John Morton, Precinct 3. I do have one question. This says to implement improvements. Is this for a study, or is this to get something done on the ground?
Mr. Tisdale.
Just to get something done.
Thanks for the question. We've already done the conceptual plan, the study on it, and this is actually to implement it. This is to do the improvements.
So this will actually result in changes to the square. Terrific.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice.
Yes, Mark, on the, how many groups are looking at the square? It seems that my recollection is like 2 or 3 different committees or groups looking at traffic improvements. Yours, in this, isn't the master plan? There seems to be like 3 different people looking at this issue. So I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah, that's a valid question. That's a good question. So these improvements we've been referring to as short-term improvements, and that's been looking at from the task force, transportation task force, the engineering department in town. You also have the long-term improvements going on. That was a Board of Selectmen initiated project. That's going on through the town's consultant, Howard Stein and Hudson. And then the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority has a downtown redevelopment plan which is also going on.
Also, Mr. Martin, through to the Board of Selectmen, according to the book, it says 2 of our selectmen voted in opposition to this article. I was wondering if one or both of these selectmen could tell us why they voted against it, and I guess it says here it was a 3-2 vote. Mr. McCrisky and Mr. Souza.
Mr. McCrisky or Mr. Souza, do you wish to respond? Mr. McCrisky.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeFelice, would you repeat the question?
Oh,
Because I
the
was
question,
talking to Selectman Souza on something else.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry. The question, Joe, was that it says here that the Board of Selectmen voted 3-2 not to support this article, and it had your name and Mr. Souza's name. And my question was why you folks decided not to support it.
Well, I can only speak for myself, is that I'm really tired of the town of Stoughton bearing the cost of everything in downtown, and the state seems to ignore Stoughton Center. They threw us a little bit of money for some sidewalks and some decorative poles a few years ago, and every time a study comes up, Mass Highway conveniently ignores Stoughton Center, just like they do with the state road stops on 138 and then picks up after it goes through Stoughton Center on the other side of 138, and the same thing on 27. They ignore it that way, and 139. Okay, so I just think that if we're going to do these things, this is not a town of Stoughton traffic issue, it's a regional traffic issue. We hear about this all the time. It's regional traffic, it's regional traffic, it's regional traffic. Route 24 is regional traffic. Well, how about if we spend regional funds to correct the problem instead of putting it on the backs of the taxpayers of Stoughton? The vote didn't, the vote passed the way it did, Ed. I think everybody just comes in, we do everything in what we believe in. Yeah. I just think it's time for us to stop footing the bill. With all due respect to people that travel through our community, I don't care how long it takes them to get through Stoughton Center. I don't want to hurt the marketability and the renovations that we want to do to downtown because we're going to make it faster for people to get through our town. I want to make it easier for them to get through Stoughton Center, but I also want to make sure that we could put buildings up there and have a use that provides a healthy tax base to our town. So it all depends how you feel. I don't think that we should be funding this. I've said that right along. I'm going to be consistent on that. I would like to bring our state legislators together and let this Stoughton Center be a regional traffic issue. If you were to sit out there and do a survey of where people are coming from, you know it as well as I know. You've lived in this town longer than me. The majority of them are out of town. It's just passing through. But we're going to keep footing the bill to fix this. I just don't agree with it.
Thank you, Joe. I give yourself and Mr. Souza credit for, I agree with basically what you said. Thank you.
Mr. Souza, all set?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I agree with that, but I was informed the other day from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because I do work for the Commonwealth, that I can no longer vote for any type of state roads or train issues or anything else, or I will lose my job and my wife will divorce me, so thank you.
Mr. Flynn.
Joe Flynn, Precinct 7. I've been a town meeting member for over 19 years now. I believe we've redesigned, redone everything to that town center 3 or 4 times at least. I do remember when it was going to be redeveloped back in the 83, 84. And a relative of mine was kind of against it, and for good reason, had a business in the center at the time. It was a good reason to fight it. And no matter how we do this, it costs us money continuously. Every time we reconfigure it temporarily, it costs us money, and it's worse than it was before. It seems every time we either get a new town engineer or a few new members of the Board of Selectmen or something, it becomes a different thing. Pardon me? Oh, okay. Don't be afraid, just be aware. I just don't understand why we keep configuring this. I agree with one of the previous speakers. I don't care about how long I sit in traffic there. If you don't like the traffic, get out and walk. Or, well, you better be running. I mean, I don't understand the red light coming off of 27 that no one ever stops because they just keeps on rolling. I got a right on red, whether the traffic's coming off of Pearl or not. They just keep on rolling, you know what I mean? So it just continuously gets worse. and worse and worse. Leave it alone. Don't spend any more money. If we have $50,000 extra, hire a teacher or a police officer or something, but don't redesign the center. Thank you.
Mr. Recupero.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. To address a couple points. I was one of the three that voted in favor of this, and I have to say, nothing's been approved. This is an important point. The $50,000 still has to go through a public hearing process before the Board of Selectmen to decide what we're going to do that's recommended by the traffic engineer that we hired, GPI. If you look at the notes in the appendix to your book, points out that in 2013, there was $75,000 appropriated to hire a traffic consultant for this town who was going to look at all the problem areas in this town and decide what, in their expert opinion, would be the most that we can get for our money to repair things, make things easier. We're not making things easier for people from out of town to go through our town and go other places. We're making our town more livable. And for crying out loud, we hired the best traffic engineer we could for the money that this town meeting appropriated, and they said, we suggest certain things that you can do, one of which has been implemented already, which was having coordination between the lights. Mr. Smith pointed out that that had been completed, and I think that's correct. That was one of the items. There are other things, creating a turn travel lane. These are small things, and as I think Mr. Batchelor pointed out in connection with Central and Pleasant, some of these things they'll be able to absorb into the DPW budget, paint on a street, to make things easier. If we're going to sit around and wring our hands and twist our mustaches waiting for the state legislature to come in and swoop into Stoughton with a suitcase full of cash to solve short-term problems that I think we can do, I think we're going to be waiting for another 50 years, which, by the way, is the last time we tried to do something really good and special in downtown Stoughton. There are some people working on broader plans, as was pointed out in a very good question, Mr. DeFelice, asking how many people have been looking at the downtown. This is not one of the grand schemes. This is one of the livable schemes. Today, if you're trying to get through the square, you can certainly do it, and it's kill or be killed. We all go, different ways around the square, and I think the assumption made by one of the previous speakers may have been that only Stoughton people, only out-of-towners go through the square. I go through the square every day. And I would like to hear from a traffic engineer, professional in their field, saying, you could do this little thing here and that little thing here, and $50,000 doesn't mean we're spending $50,000. That means that that's what we're appropriating based on their expert opinion. I can tell you right now, the full package of what they suggested, we didn't like that. We sent it back. We said, go take another crack at it. Come back to us again. So I would suggest to you that the $50,000 is an outside number. Can't promise that. But I would ask that you put your faith in the professional, Mr. Tisdale, Mr. Batchelor, town planner, Ms. O'Toole, who have all looked at these things, studied these things, and said, with all our expertise, this is what we recommend to make things better. Yeah, I appreciate we've done this before, but not like this. We really haven't done, and I've read every traffic study, every study of the downtown that's ever been printed. Not like this. So I ask that you support it.
Mr. Luke?
Can I ask, how many years ago was it that we did the big reconstruction of that center?
2006.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
You mean the lights?
2006, I recall.
Yeah, all the lights. 2006, so and then 3 years ago you said that we just spent another $75,000 for another study?
Not for this. We hired a traffic consultant for 20, it's in the book.
Yep.
$75,000 to hire a traffic consultant, Green and Peterson Inc.
But why wasn't that done in 2006 when we did the whole reconstruction?
Well, because this town appropriated the money in 2013, so that's why we're back here now for this. And I apologize, my tone is only because I'm...
No, that's fine. No, I understand. That's fine.
That's the only reason.
And the state.
I just,
And can I also say something?
I can hear you. You don't need to go all the way back over there.
You could use a table,
I'm
Mike.
sorry, but Noreen O'Toole also, she's chairwoman of the OCPC Transportation Task Force. We get, correct me if I'm wrong, We've gotten grant money just about every year we've applied for traffic things because we're well connected. We keep a good handle on what's appropriated for grant money. Everything that we can get, we do get.
I guess they didn't. Okay.
Just another side comment.
Mr. Hill.
That change that happened back then was paid for, I think, by a $2 million grant from the state.
It was.
Yeah.
So that just kind of doesn't make it any better for me.
Mr. Cohen.
We spent $2 million by a state grant, and we did
Better
it.
lights. I think it was
And we
more
didn't do it any better than that, and now
More
we're coming back wanting more money?
More beautification than anything.
Back in
Mr. Cohen.
Back in 2006, when we did this, the lighting, the engineer that did this had no idea what he was doing. Believe me. Believe me. You got the state controlled this. They had to redo the road. They dug up the road. They dug it up wrong. They dug it too deep. They come back up because I had a couple of contractors working on this, and they said it was the biggest abortion they ever saw. And we had nothing to do with it because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts did it. When they finished it, they got rid of it and turned it into Stoughton roads, and that's where we are.
I'm not getting any more of a warm and fuzzy.
I'm gonna tell you another thing. They put in the traffic lights.
I'm sorry.
We don't even know the phasing they're talking, the boxes talk to each other. We don't even know if the boxes ever talk to each other till a gentleman come out last year and said, they're not talking to each other. Yeah, they're talking. They're going to be out this week, according to our town engineer, to readjust them. It's small money to take care of a problem. They're implementing stuff here, left turns, certain things that have to be done. The square is a disaster to start with. If they can make it even 20 to 30% better, we're accomplishing something that we haven't had before. Give them the support and just let's get this stuff done. Because if you're waiting for the state, we'll all be dead before we get anything from them. Guaranteed that.
All right.
Why? Mr. Murphy.
Second.
That's to cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. If there's no opposition to this, it's a 2/3 vote. If it's not unanimous, I will take account. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, let's take a count. All those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take a count. Get some of those leg cramps off. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 6. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 13. Please keep it down. Precinct 3. Precinct 3. Do we have a count for precinct 3? 12. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 13. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 15. Precinct 6. 6 is 15. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 8. Precinct 8. How many? 7. Precinct 1 on the nose. 0. All those opposed, please rise.
That was 5 that you were looking for.
Precinct 1?
5.
Precinct 1 is 5. Precinct 2? Precinct 2 is 2. Precinct 3? Precinct 3 is 1. Precinct 4? Precinct 4 is 4. Precinct 5? Precinct 5 is 1. Precinct 6? 6 is 1. Precinct 7? Precinct 7 is 5. Precinct 8? 8 is 0. The motion carries 89 yes, 19 no. That is certainly more than two-thirds. You had 827, right? Mr. Hill.
Article 35, Transportation Engineering Services, that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the cost of consultant services for transportation-related engineering analysis, design, and surveying services as needed. Such sum to be added to the appropriate, that sums to be added to that appropriated for such purposes under Article 60 of the May 2013 town meeting, and as funding therefore to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum pursuant of general laws, chapters 44, section 7 or 8, and or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
Any discussion?
That was a tongue twister.
Mr. DeFelice. I imagine you're going to ask.
Mr. Meyer, through you to, I guess, the board, so whoever. Basically, what you're asking us is to have an engineer on a retainer. Is that what we're talking about here? Similar to having an attorney on a retainer?
That's a good question. That's not to have them on a retainer. We actually have a specific use for these funds. It's going to be to actually begin the survey and design of the intersections I was just talking to you about to get the projects on the tip. So essentially, a town typically spends, we use $100,000 for design, and if you get on the tip, then you get the cost of the complete redo of the intersection funded by the state, and that can be up between $2 and $3 million. That's about the average cost of an intersection to build, but the town has to design it.
So, I guess you kind of lost me there. So, the $100,000 and kind of put this together for me, if you could, the $100,000 in the consulting firm, or consulting, are we talking, it sounds like we're talking about having somebody on a call to solve our problems, traffic-wise?
No, this is just to design the intersections. Our existing on-call traffic engineer is the engineer we'll be using to do that.
I mean, I don't know about the rest of the folks here, but we've had several articles related to various traffic improvements, traffic questions. We've been voting sums of money like it's going out of style, and now this seems to be like we've been softened up by, you know, George Foreman, and now this is like the knockout punch. I mean, what are we doing with all this spending? We're over here, we're spending 50 grand for one aspect of traffic, and now we ask for another 100,000. I mean, this has got to end somewhere. I mean, you know, I just don't get it. It's just like, it's just spending money like it's going out of style.
Mr. Zemanian?
Which two, Mark Zemanian, Precinct 1, sorry about that. And thank you, Mr. Moderator. Which two intersections are we talking about? It says two priority intersections, but doesn't specify what intersections they are.
So we already talked about Central and Pleasant. That was one of our priority intersections, but we're doing that through another route.
Right.
Tosca Drive area intersection is another spot. And then the Central and Pleasant Street intersection is another spot.
The Central Pleasant we just went over, though.
These are all local intersections. They're not state state highway layout intersections.
Right, but we just funded the physical changes on Central and Pleasant, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Did I say Central?
You did.
Central and Pearl.
Central and
Excuse me.
Pearl. So Tosca Drive and then Central and Pearl?
Yes. The way, you know, a little backup to that too. I've had plenty of discussions with Mass DOT, and and they like planning corridors. So in other words, right now, they actually have a design initiated for Central and 138. That's underway through Mass DOT. And if you look westbound, the next major intersection is Central and Pearl, and then the one after that is Tosca. So they like a corridor planning, so everything can be in sync, as opposed to doing one intersection here, one over there. So I've had a lot of discussions with Mass DOT on which intersections would be feasible and that they would be enlightened to.
Well, if that's the case, and they like working in corridors, why did we not start at Route 24 and work all the way down to Cobb's Corner?
Well, we got Central and Pleasant moving
That's right,
forward.
yeah.
So,
But you just got through saying we like to work in or they like to work in corridors.
Right.
I'm not arguing the fact that these need to be done. I wanted to clarify where we were doing the work, because we just approved two pretty big ones, and, they want another $100,000 for more. So, thank you.
Mr. Lute.
Scott Lutz, Precinct 1. So one of the intersections is, you said Tosca, but that's really 27, which isn't that a state road? Why wouldn't that be covered under state funds?
it's a good question. It's a state numbered route. It's not a state highway layout.
Right.
So it's two different. It's actually a local intersection, local road.
Right.
It just has a state route number.
Right.
Any further discussion? I'll take it that, anybody else? All right. There being no further debate, no one indicating they otherwise, on the motion, which is to appropriate $100,000 for design and surveying services as needed, as so printed in the recommendation, and this is a borrowing pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8, and any other enabling authority and traditional wording. If it's not unanimous, I will take a standing count. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. All those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take a count. Precinct 1. 6. Precinct 1 is 6. Precinct 2. 9. Precinct 2 is 9. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 10. Precinct 4. Precinct 4. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 13. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 15. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 14. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 9. Precinct 8. 8. Precinct 8 is 7. All those opposed, please rise. Chairman, take count. Precinct 1.
6.
Precinct 1 is 6. Precinct 2. 3. Precinct 2 is 3. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 1. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 2. Precinct 5. 0. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 2. Precinct 7. 3 and 1. Precinct 8. 0. Precinct 8 is 0. The motion carries 83 yes, 17 no, 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Article 36, Water Department Capital Equipment, Vehicles. Mr. Hill.
That the That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $62,000 to purchase and equip the vehicles as printed in the warrant for the Water Department, and as funding therefore to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow said sum pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8, and any enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
Any discussion? If I don't see anybody. On the motion, which was just read, and that's to appropriate the sum of $62,000, which there will be a borrowing. If it's not unanimous, I will request a standing count. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I will declare it unanimous. Mr. Hill.
Article 37, Sewer Department Capital Equipment. That the town vote to transfer from sewer retained earnings the sum of $170,000 to purchase and equip the vehicles and equipment for the sewer department as written in Article 37 of the printed warrant.
Any discussion? There being none, this only requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I would even call that unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're now into the big, heavy stuff. This is the various capital. There was a handout, I'm going to remind you, on the chart, the big chart. If you go down to C, Public Works, Item 5, water main replacement, is under the last item that was omitted. All numbers add up, but this number wasn't put in there. The annual town meeting of 5/11, the amount of $125,379.28 is under general borrowing. That's the only addition to these. The procedure for this, I'm going to ask the Finance Committee Chairman to make what you call a general motion. And we'll go pretty much the way we do with the ultimately at the end, like we do in our budget. We'll just list the itemized budget. I believe he has in the report on page numbers 111 to 114 is Mr. Hill, your recommended motion under Article 38.
Mr. Moderator, there's one other slight correction right there in that same item 5, water main replacement, 2 lines above where it says $700 from Article 69 from the annual town meeting of 5/11. It's really Article 67, not 69.
Which one are you going? Article 60. What's the dollar amount again?
Yeah, the dollars stay the same.
Which is a water main improvement or the?
Yep, 2 lines above the red item that was corrected.
Oh, okay.
So above 125,000, 2 lines up where it says $700.
Okay.
It should be A67.
Okay.
And I'm just reading the motion here, correct? And I'm going to say as written in the printed handout. So that the town vote to transfer from available funds or free cash or borrow for the purchase and, as many be appropriate, equipping of the capital items as specified in the chart below, and with each line considered a separate appropriation, and for those items where general borrowing is the funding source, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow said sums pursuant to general laws, chapters 44, section 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and issue bonds and notes therefore as printed in the written handout.
Now, we'll see how this works. Go just like we do in the budget. Then if there's any question, we'll take it right up then. Capital item, townhouse vehicle pool, and it's 3 cars, and the recommendation is $81,249 for the various citations listed. Is there any discussion on?
Are we going to vote on every one of these, Mr. Moderator?
No, I'm just asking if anybody wants to talk on it. I'm not going to ask for the dollar amount at this time.
Well, just on any of the items in here, not to go through every single
Well,
one.
I'm just going in order so that we don't have people going all over the chart. So they want, there is a, people, yeah. We will take a vote on the whole thing. It is right now, just, what we're doing right now is allowing anybody to question any one of those sections. And if there's no debate, no question on it, at the end, we'll take the vote. They want to have information, fine.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can we discuss out of order, or do you want to go in order?
I'd rather go in order because we'll get thoroughly diffused.
All right. Mr. Moderator, since I'm the first one up and I'll step in front of my co-meeting members. On this article, vehicle or townhouse vehicles, who are the 3 cars for, and what is the town hall doing with a truck? So somebody explain? I don't know who's using what or where and who. Didn't we have a policy at one point to refurbish the replaced police cars to use for the town hall of somebody who needed it because they don't go very far or that often? So I'd like an answer as to who's getting these 3 vehicles and who's getting the truck to use at the town hall.
Mr. Hartman.
The townhouse presently uses old police cars, and to put it politely, they're junk, and they don't run. 3 of them are just sitting, waiting to be junked. Others are covered with mold. None of them are highway worthy. In the interim, the board has adopted a new policy on vehicle replacement, which requires us to buy green vehicles. The original request was for 6 vehicles to replace the current fleet of 6 old Crown Vics, of only of which 3 run. The board, the selectmen, cut it back to 3 cars. The cars will be assigned to the health department, the engineering department, and the building department. The pickup truck will be assigned to the facilities person and will be shared with the general manager of the golf course.
I just think this is a little bit much, but I can understand the green vehicles. You're getting rid of 6, as you said. We'll get some money out of those somewhere from somebody, either for parts or whatever. Health, engineering, and the building department, okay. Sharing the vehicle with the golf course, very suspect.
Mr. Murphy. This is on vehicles only.
Are you saying that I can't question the funding that's involved in all in this?
No, you can, it's the subject. I'm not just going to itemize all of it. I wasn't reading them all off. If you want any part under A, townhouse, number 1, and actually number 2.
Well, my question kind of goes to the fact that I see there's a lot of small dollar amounts in these articles that have been sitting out here. Some of these articles, for example, were sitting out since May '05. You go down further down the list, down to water main replacement, $18,000. That's been sitting out since '06. The following article, May 11. My question, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the town accountant or who can never answer the question, are we paying interest on this money as it's declared as a borrowing money?
Mr. Rowe?
We are paying coupon bonds. We're paying principal and interest over the life of the bonds, fixed amounts to the bondholders. Most of those probably not be callable, so we wouldn't be able to, use this money to liquidate those bonds. But this is basically a result of, I apologize, the allergies are destroying my voice here. But this is basically a result of, we borrow the money, and then the project comes in costing less than what's borrowed. So we have a little bit of money left over.
So, for example, the water main, the bottom line there that's in red, $125,374.28. There's no date on that one, but that's money that's been sitting there? Or is
that money is new, that would be the new borrowing.
The new borrowing.
The ones above are the money that's existing in the old articles.
I think what happens is, over the past years, town meeting, we've borrowed a lot of money, and it sits there, and we pay interest on it. These articles that we borrowed, we allowed the money to be borrowed for. We shouldn't let it be sitting there. These should be closed out after the purchase was made. You buy, say, a truck for the DPW. They come before us and they ask for $50,000. They get it for $45,000. That $5,000 is money that we're paying interest on. Now, at some point, we should cancel that out. I hate to pay money on something that I'm not using and it's just sitting there collecting dust. If we're paying interest on it, why don't we invest that money and make money, maybe not as much as the interest? Something doesn't add up to me. These should be looked at on a regular basis and be closed out on a regular basis. I'm not going to sit here and discuss article by article as far as the vehicles because the different departments felt they were needed. I'm more concerned about the money that we have sitting out there, long periods of time, taking more money just to let the money sit there. That's not right. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice?
Ms. Meyer, are any of the other line items up for discussion, or is it just A, 1, and 2?
What's your question again?
Can we ask questions on any of these line items, or are we restricted?
Right now, I'm sticking to the townhouse vehicle pool. A.
So that means we're going to vote on these by section?
No, we're just allowing you to bring it up for discussion, and if there's no change in anything, we'll proceed. That's all.
So if I have a question further down, when do I ask?
I'll recognize you at that time.
So you're going to read through them? Is that what's going to happen?
That's just like we do the budget.
Okay.
Treat it just like that same way.
All right, so I'll wait till you get to the one I want to speak on.
All right.
Which one, Eddie?
If there's any further discussion on townhouse vehicle pool. Okay, items B, fire and rescue, items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Any discussion? No. Okay, C, public works.
Mr. Moderator, under C, just have a question on number 3.
Mr. DeFelice.
What?
C3. Go with your question.
Oh, okay. To you too, Mr. Batchelor. On this particular one, John, we're replacing a machine. I think I may have spoken to you earlier on this. we just had occasion to do something very similar. We had one of those stand-on type mowers that we blew an engine on, a 19 horsepower Kawasaki, and so we were looking at either replacing the machine at approximately this cost, actually it was less, or to repair it. So when we went to Norfolk Power, one of the leading companies in the area for sales and service, we talked to the people there and looked at the new piece, and then we looked at the possibility that they suggested was to put a new engine on the machine. And we decided to do that, and it cost us about $2,100 by having them do it. If we had opted to just get the engine, it was about $1,700 and change. So I guess what I'm saying is, I know everybody likes to have new, but when you're in the real world, a lot of us have to make those decisions as to whether we can afford to go new. And when it was like $8,000 versus $2,000, we did the $2,000. So I guess my question is, why can't you guys do the same here?
We do that on a regular basis. We've changed out quite a few of the engines, actually. I believe the unit in question is one that's fairly old. I think it's belt driven. When it's not one of the hydraulic ones. We're just trying to upgrade. I think if you go back through the years, you'll find that I haven't asked for a mower in a number of years.
Okay. No, I realize that people don't like to fix things anymore, but anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. We have to start, I mean, if you have...
We've replaced a number of motors, Ed, over the years.
Okay. Well, 2 versus, well, whatever, I guess no one cares. Anyway, I guess that's my only question in that section.
Mr. Coleman, did you want to?
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5, about these bonds. They're non-callable bonds, I'm told, so you can't just say, hey, look, we'll give you the money back. We won't pay any more interest. Can't be done. And somebody said, well, the money's just sitting there. I passed a note up front saying, is the money being invested if we have this extra money? And the answer was yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So we are kind of keeping up with that. And this is a good way of using that money and moving along. Thank you.
Mr. Rowe.
We try to keep these amounts as small. There are arbitrage rules. You can't borrow money and then invest it to try to make money on that. So we don't, all these amounts, that's why most of these amounts are small. So, but there are arbitrage rules involved. But, you know, the treasurer has interest-bearing accounts. Most of the money, if it's not operating, it goes into those accounts. So,
Mr. Hill.
And Mr. Moderator, just to follow up on a note from the previous speaker, Mr. Murphy, this is the right thinking to get this all cleaned up. This one article cleans up 24 old articles, and we're going to retire $471,184.81 in unexpended articles at this point, so that we can move those off the books, fund these projects, and keep moving forward. And this is just this one article. We've used these articles to these unexpended funds to fund other articles as well. So we've been doing this over the last few years, so we've retired a lot of articles.
Mr. Murphy.
So then, just from my understanding, on 05, we had some money there. So we've been borrowing money on that. Or we've been paying interest on that money. So let's say it's a 10-year loan. So in other words, that loan would be up next year. Is that a fair way of looking at that?
I'm going to say yes.
I'll accept that.
Mr. DeFelice on the same subject. Well, then, Mr. Hanson, he's figured out what he wants to talk about. Have you got?
Which line item are you on, sir?
Well, Mr. Hanson, I thought he was ready to. We're still on C, Public Works.
All right, well, this is a sort of generic question anyway. These various leftovers from various articles and stuff, I think the only concern I have is if we borrowed money back in, we'll say, '09, annual town meeting 5 of '09 for the mowers, and did we borrow that money specifically for mowers? And if are we using that money for something else that it was not really appropriated for?
Mr. Rowe, could you explain that?
To the speaker, this would have been that money would have been for different purposes. If you have specific ones, I can look them up. But
it'll take forever.
You can use the unused bond proceeds, unexpended bond proceeds, for another capital project which has the same statutory borrowing period or longer. So, for example, you see the references to Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8. Each one of those, each type of capital purchase has a borrowing limit. Like, for example, departmental equipment is 5 years. Building might be 20 years. Water project, 30 years. So if you have a 5-year borrowing, 5-year bond out there, and you have unexpended proceeds, you can use that for another statutory 5-year project or longer. If you have a 20-year bond out there, you wouldn't be able to use that for a 5-year statutory item, but you could use it for another 20 or another 30. So it can be reused for another project which has the same statutory borrowing term or longer.
Okay, now another question. I'm not exactly sure how to ask it because I'm not sure of the terminology, but this money that's borrowed, what was the interest rate that we're paying on that versus if we borrowed it tomorrow? Is that old money, new money? Or do you have even
some
that,
of the older ones are higher interest rate, but we've had several other refinancing since then. So we've had several of those. Our financial advisor, First Southwest Incorporated, reviews the market and will recommend that we what's called refund or refinance bonds from time to time. So
thank you.
Mr. DeFelice, still on that? Mr. Gito? This is Public Works in general.
This is in general. Through you to the chairman of the Finance Committee. You said there's about $400,000 in borrowing that you're using for this article and other money that from other articles as well. About how much is that in total that we're getting from other articles? And does that show up in free cash, or where does it show up in the revenue sheet?
So,
somebody have an
for
answer?
Article 38, we're using up 24 previous articles, unexpended funds totaling $471,184.81. In addition, we have recommended general borrowing of $1,648,140.19.
I'm not talking just
and
about
use of free
38.
cash of $15,000.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
No.
Then I don't
But
understand
thank you.
your
It
question.
was very, very interesting. I guess I'm having a little bit of a problem trying to figure out this budget this year and what's going to happen next year and in subsequent years. We had about $4 million in free cash last year or the year before. We got $6 million this year, and you're saying that we're taking money that was previously borrowed for other activities that are going on this year. And I guess I'm wondering, how are we going to sustain that if we are taking and using the money that we have borrowed? I think it's a good idea to use the money that we borrowed, but are we overspending? And, you know, we got $2 million more in free cash this year. What's going to happen next year? And I guess I'm wondering, how much more are we talking about this year over other years? Is it another $1 million? Is the borrowing part that that we are using this year, the $400,000 for this article and other articles? I'm just trying to get some sense of what's happening.
I'm not sure how to answer the question because it's so complex. So this year,
see if we can make it simple.
We have some parameters that we use when we recommend for borrowing for articles, because that's all we're going to borrow for, right? We're not going to borrow to fund the general budget.
I'm not asking what we're borrowing. I'm asking what it is that we're using for previously borrowed, for previous borrowing. What's that total amount? Where does it show up on our revenue sheet? Or does it show up on our revenue sheet? And if it doesn't show up on our revenue sheet, then that's in addition to the $2 million extra that we have this year.
Total unexpended articles for the that the Finance Committee recommended for all articles in this warrant was $545,991.
Thank you. I probably should have been able to find that, right?
No, actually, no. Well, actually,
okay.
maybe.
So that's $2.5 million, perhaps more this year than we have spent in other years.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense of
So you're talking about free cash?
I'm talking about free cash,
right,
and other articles that we're taking money from prior years to fund our $100 million budget for this year, or whatever that number is.
So let's talk about free cash for a second. Let's chunk this up and compartmentalize it. The free cash was $6 million this year. We lost $1.5 million right off the top for snow removal. We lost another $1 million for insurances because those increased, and then we lost more for retirements. So at the end of the day, we lost most of that $6 million was consumed in the budget or in operating expenses for snow removal because of increased costs, in addition to settlement of contracts. So.
No, I'm not questioning the fact that that money was used. What I'm saying is next year, we may not have $6 million in free cash. We may not have another $500,000 in unexpended borrowing. So let's just say that that's $2.5 million. We're still going to have to pay for some other things. If we have another bad winter, we're going to have to pay for that. We may not have $2.5 million to pay for all that. How are we doing? What should I be worried about next year?
I think next year and the year after present challenges.
Thank you.
So, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the money, you can't spend it. And we're required to submit a balanced budget. So if we're $2.5 million light in the budget request, then it's going to have to come from somewhere. So you either have the revenue or you decrease the expenses. That's the only formula that works.
So I hope we're putting an awful lot of money in our stabilization account.
Actually, this year we're not. Well, actually, let me qualify that. The stabilization account has over $5 million in it. That's kind of the rainy day stabilization fund. We have the building stabilization fund as well that we've been trying to dutifully fund for the last couple of years, and I think that that's probably $2.5 million so far. But this year, because of all these extraordinary expenses, we're not really going to be able to put that much in it, to our disappointment.
All of our disappointment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Ural?
Just a, Erdem Ural, Precinct 7. Just a follow-up to Mr. Gito's question. I didn't hear the answer. So the money that was borrowed but not used, does that show on the revenue sheet? If so, where? Is it part of the free cash? Or it doesn't show?
It's not on the revenue sheet.
It's not? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion on Public Works C? If not, we'll move on to D, Police Department. Any discussion on the items in that? There's none on Police Department. (38E), Town Hall. No discussion. F, Cedar Hill. Mr. DeFelice.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to find out why they need a tractor with backhoe and bucket for $30,000. See, I'm sorry, F2. And also, Mr. Moderator, just as a general question, if you wanted, you mentioned this is going to be voted as a bundle. Incidentally, it's a $2.2 million bundle. We would make the people running for president happy if they could get a bundle that size, but I guess they get even more. So if you wanted to vote against, I think there's like 19 line items. So if you wanted to vote against one item, you have to vote against the entire bundle? Mr. Moderator?
No, what you would do is amend the motion to reduce something, if that's what you want to do.
Well, I mean, you know, most of these I have no problem with. There's a second one I'm questioning, but it seems to me, I don't think we should be voting on these as a bundle, because if you want to scrutinize, say, one line item, you should be able to do that. This way, if you're in favor of most of them, and there's one you don't favor, you have to vote against everything. That does not make sense.
No, if at this time there's an item in here, and you're talking about it, you have the right to make a motion to amend that amount. So, for example, if item 2, under Cedar Hill, tractor and backhoe, which is on the back of that sheet, you disagree with that dollar amount, or want to have it removed or changed, you can ask to make a motion thus.
So,
if you want to zero that out, that's your privilege to make that a motion. We're going to vote the bottom line of Article 38 as a package with any amendments that it may be made by this body.
Okay, Mr. Wright. Well, Mr. Wright, given the large debt up there, I'd like to make a motion to zero out the tractor tractor with backhoe, which would be line item F2.
So I'm gonna, as long as you just want to vote right now an amendment, and just so I get it transcribed right, to change the dollar amount, the recommended dollar amount to 0. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, for this line item only.
So it's F2.
Which requires a new bottom line total, and that affects the motion.
No, we see, yeah, that's right.
Mr. Moderator, I think I had a second. Can we discuss it?
All right. Now, town clerk is, town council brings to my attention under procedural motions number 8, no amendments or substitute motions for an article may be brought on the floor in the same session as delivered in writing to all town meeting members, except by a motion to suspend the rules, or it is a final session of town meeting. Further, that it is any proposed amendments or substitute motion shall be in hands of the moderator not less than 30 hours before a session. So, in this case, I'll ask for a motion first. If you wish to suspend the rules and allow this to be included at this time, or whatever. So this is, in other words, I mean, you're given the opportunity to continue the discussion on the way you are and accept any other motion, but still maybe not vote on the bottom line. Okay, it's to suspend the rules to allow us to vote on this amendment, which is less than 10 words. Whoa. Mr. Coleman, on that. I need a second to do that.
Can that motion be to
Okay.
suspend the rules for any changes to this particular article number 38? So
that's fine.
So we don't have to go through this procedure again if we've got something that we want to
Absolutely.
reduce.
And that's what I took to mean in this.
Thank you.
For all the articles, anytime there's a substitute here, I will go for that. On those in suspending the rules, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
All right. I'm going to ask for a standing count, just for verify. It didn't sound like 2/3. The sounds up here don't. Precinct 1, yeah. Precinct 1 is 10. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 9. Precinct 3. Precinct 3, 12. Precinct 4. Please, I cannot hear the back room with other people here. The sounds in here are not that good. That's why I even have to use a microphone. Mrs. Gito, Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 5. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 11. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 11. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 8. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 7. All those opposed, please rise and the chairman take account. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 0. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 5. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 1. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 10. Precinct 5. 3 and an abstention. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 6. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 0. The motion carries to suspend the rules just for this article. Allow us to, yes, 29 times 2, it'd be 68, 58, 73 to 29. That means it's twice as many as no.
Mr. Moderator, just a question for you.
requirement to have this motion in your hands 30 hours prior? Yes, that's what we were doing. No, we voted to suspend the rules. Right. It says furthermore, you want them in your hands 30 hours ahead. Are you waiving that requirement for the moderator to have the motion in his hand? Because if you're doing it for this one, I just want to know, that's all. Yes, that's what it was, just for this. Yes. That's right now, this is done basically the same way we're doing. Thank you. So the motion carries to suspend the rule. Now, just as a favor, put on a piece of paper that you just want to remove the amendment, just so that we have it up front here that we all agree on it, that we're going to amend, motion to amend this chart, section F, Cedar Hill, item 2, second item 2 to 00. That's
Cedar
easy
Hill.
enough. That's less than 10 words, I hope, not counting the zeros. And the total, well, we'll change the total as we go along. So
Amend the chart, F2 under Cedar Hill.
F2 Cedar Hill,
Is that all you need?
Cedar Hill, is to reduce it to 0. That's, now we're strictly talking about whether you want this or not.
So you want,
Strictly strictly talking about the tractor and backhoe and bucket. And if you want to, and I'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to say anything on that, on why you want to strike that item.
all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Also, thank you, fellow reps. I'm kind of surprised that I'm going to be able to speak. Thank you very much. Anyway, the reason why I questioned this expenditure, at the beginning of town meeting, we talked about how far in the hole we are in this particular venture at the golf course. If we got to start looking at things as if this money were our own money. We are representing a lot of people back home that aren't here, that are dependent upon us to watch how their money is spent. We're not here to accommodate the wishes of the various managers, committees, and so forth. We're here to try to wisely spend the money for all the taxpayers, okay? So when you see that something is running into the hole year after year after year, I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years, I'm talking about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. At some point, if this was your own private venture and you were losing money like we're losing money here over a long period of time, I think you would say, no mas, this is it, we can't keep doing this. It's not fair to the people that are paying the tax bills. And it's, we got to start thinking about the people that are paying the bills. And we're not, in my opinion, we don't do that. So
Okay.
in this case, I would, the reason why I wanted to strike this was because it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep pouring money into a failing venture. At a minimum, they could borrow, or they could lease a piece of equipment. They're not going to recover 160 grand in 2 years or 1 year. So that's why I brought that up. Thank you.
6 minutes.
Yeah, who's counting when you're having fun?
Yeah, we do that. Mrs. Colvin.
You know what I'm going to say. I am confused. I thought we finally resolved this a few years ago, that when there is a positive motion from the Finance Committee, that's voted first. And then if it fails, we allow the amended motion. Otherwise, what we do, we went through this a few years ago, and I don't know if any of you remember, maybe you've blocked it, it was absolute chaos. Not that we're all powerful by any stretch, but what you're basically doing is saying that all the work that goes in to vetting these articles, all the hearings, all the documentation, all the backup, can just get tossed on the floor with an amended motion. I have no problem with amended motions, I don't, but I thought we finally resolved once and for all that the positive motion gets presented and voted first. Then if it fails, we do an amended motion. Are we not doing that anymore?
At this time, this is the floor, this is the assembly that still has the right to make the final changes on this whole warrant.
So my question again is, who goes first? Does the positive
These
motion
people
get
do.
presented?
You're still an advisory board. The Finance Committee, Municipal Regulations, Intergovernmental Relations, and Municipal Regulations Committee are all advisory boards to town meeting. That means the final word comes from you people as a whole. And
So all this-
we highly respect the work and the efforts put in by the Finance Committee for their guidance, and it should continue to be. And this is just one last opportunity. And I think so far you're hitting about .98 on getting everything that you've worked at, so.
That's not the point. This is not power. Believe me, we should not be omnipotent. We are not. This is not about that at all. It's about process and procedure and the rules. And I feel like we play fast and loose with the rules. Every day I show up, I don't know what rule we're going to follow on that particular day. I truly just don't. And I know that we've had absolute times of chaos because a motion was put out there and someone else decided they didn't like it and they wanted something else instead. So this is just the order that we vote.
Well,
And
Mrs. Colburn, at this point, we've taken a vote to suspend the rules.
I understand that.
And-
What's my
and,
time, Barbara? We've had people talk for 2 hours. I'm just trying to get something cleared.
Well, right
Tase
now,
me and
we've
bring
got
me
nobody.
out, that's fine, but I just...
I think you've made your comment, and they're well respected. Okay?
Okay, that was not my point. Thank you.
Mr. Linehan,
John Linehan, Precinct 1.
and this is on the tractor and backhoe.
Correct. I was just going to say, I wasn't at the hearings, and I don't make all the hearings. I know you guys love us to be at every hearing. I'm out a lot of nights, so we do have to trust you guys. And I think this was an arbitrary recommendation. I'm sure the golf course needs this piece of equipment, and how in the heck do you ever think they can lessen their losses every year without being properly equipped? We can cut out all the staff too and save money. You know, it's kind of these guys did go through hearings. I'm quite sure they didn't recommend this without giving it due consideration, and it just feels like a very arbitrary sort of thing to pick out. And the whole thing feels a little arbitrary. If there's a good reason behind it, I would go with it, but I can't see it. I think the golf course needs its equipment. I hate to say, that golf course may never run in the black. It's still providing a great service to an awful lot of people in the town, and especially a lot of young people.
Mr. Hill.
Just a note, Mr. Moderator. The original town request that was submitted to the Board of Selectmen was reduced by the Board of Selectmen. The number then came to the Finance Committee, and after after a public hearing by a number of standing committees, the Finance Committee recommended to knock that number down again. So what was almost $2.2 million is now $1,134,000. So the Finance Committee knocked it down another $550,000, or 25%. So we vetted each one of these. We understood what the priorities of each of the departments were. We took what the departments were, and then we cut out what we didn't think was necessary and immediate at this time. These aren't arbitrary and capricious numbers. They're well researched. They were heard publicly, and nobody at the public hearings spoke to these items. But to the previous speaker's point, now arbitrarily, there's a number with no research or any really factor information to back it up to change this. The reason these articles were submitted this way was to help save time in town meeting, to consolidate articles, and we've got 14 articles, potential articles here, 19 potential articles wrapped up into one. So again, it was intended to be a time saver, and it was also intended to pull all this information together into one area just for these items, and this was just for general capital outlay. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice.
The last two speakers have basically accused me of doing something that was arbitrary. I gave the reason why I stood up here and said that, and I told you that it was because this thing is over 160 grand in the hole. And I mentioned that it's something you have to look at when you're losing money at that rate. It's not arbitrary to say, no more, enough already. That's not being arbitrary. It's trying to use some common sense, at least the way I was brought up. I'm a lot older than many of the folks here.
Okay,
I'm sorry for that. But to say that I brought this up as an arbitrary number is ridiculous because they weren't listening to the statement. I will yell. I'm getting tired of this.
Mr. DeFelice, you've stated your point. Mr. Laurie.
Dave Lurie, Precinct 6. So I have a pit in my stomach right now over the fact that up to now, I always thought when we had a borrowing article that when you didn't, that when you said, I'm going to give $1 million to a project, that if we spent $750,000, that $250,000 wouldn't be borrowed. And to hear that every time we vote on these borrowing articles, that this money just builds up as another way for us to be able to spend more money on things that we didn't originally vote on. I just want to know is when we're not finishing the amount that we voted, there's leftover money, why does it have to go into a spending article? Why can't it go back into our pockets as tax savings so that we don't end up in the hole even deeper? I think that's a reasonable question to say, you mean I have to worry about every time I vote for a debt article that I might not be voting for the full amount?
That's right.
This is
I think
because it's money. This is money that's spent from something that was voted on sometime before. It's very relevant.
Mr. Lurie, I think we've got the point on where you're going at. We are still dealing. You just have a statement that
what
it was.
So there's no answer to that. Yeah.
The answer is the way you vote. Mr. Gito.
Okay, so we're talking about the tractor. I'm in favor of the tractor. We've already had the discussion about the golf course. I think that at least I thought that most of us thought, well, let's see if we can turn the golf course around. We can't turn the golf course around if we don't have a tractor. I'm voting for the tractor. I hope you do too. Thank you.
Mr. Flynn.
Joe Flynn, Precinct 7. Also a previous member of the Finance Committee, and I do appreciate the hard work he's due. I'm not totally in favor of the way you did this. I understand why you did it. But my question is to anyone who can answer it, is who's going to be operating this tractor? Someone please stand up and answer.
Mr. Hartman.
There are 2 employees of the golf course who are qualified to operate the tractor.
Qualified by having a 2A1C license?
Yes.
And that's all? Summer Help's not going to be operating it?
No.
Thank you.
Mrs. McNeil?
No, just another comment. This is also another piece of an inventory that the DPW is going to be able to take advantage of as well.
This is just a comment from, in response to the chair of the Finance Committee. We all are here listening and wanting to be part of this and making decisions. And I'm kind kind of getting a little bit aggravated with the fact that we can't question or ask or do something different than what is being presented. We understand that you vetted things, but we also have opinions, and we also don't, I'm just going to rubber stamp things. And I think we've done a very good job this time of really working through all of them. And I'm very upset that one or two things get talked about, and now we're getting all chastised. I think we should be able to vote on things as we see that they should be. We suspended the rules for a reason, and I think it should continue to be, that we should have a voice. Otherwise, why are we bothering to be here?
Mr. Moderator, I'll need to turn towards
Now, let's, Mr. Hill, and it's on the motion itself.
No, I'm just going to speak to the previous speaker.
I think we've carried that enough.
I'm sorry, I was mentioned in the last speaker's notes.
All right.
And just to say at a very high level, absolutely things can be discussed, and that's what town meeting's about. But when it wasn't discussed in the public hearings, we're not sure why we're doing these things in the first place. So if there's no point of the public hearings, we shouldn't have them anymore. But there are 70 volunteers and standing committees that make the time and effort to get this done. The minutes are recorded, they're on SMAC, it's taped live most of the cases, and it's advertised. So there's a lot of trouble that goes into preparing for this. So again, we make a recommendation, and absolutely you can vote them up or down or whatever the body decides, because we are just here to make a recommendation to the town meeting, because we're an extension of the town meeting. So I don't dispute that. I guess I'm just confused that there wasn't any questions that came to us about this, or why weren't we able to address these things prior to getting to this point in the meeting. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Town Moderator.
Mr. Murphy.
One of the things about Cedar Hill, it's entertainment, it's pleasure, it's relaxation. Over the years I've been here, every time I turn around, somebody wants to close the place down, do something with it, other than golf. Yes, there are a lot of golf courses in the neighborhood. Some are run better than others. Some make more money than others. That's a management thing. If you want to fix something at Cedar Hill, you have to look at the management. We've gone through a couple of different things. I've seen that golf course improve 10 times fold since I've moved to this town, since I started playing golf. I brought my kids down there to play golf. If you want to teach or you want to learn how to play golf, go down there on a Saturday afternoon. It's nice and quiet. You can go out there, you can play a nice leisure game of golf, you can learn the golf, you can learn the game, and you can enjoy it. That's a service the town provides. That's something that we all agreed upon years ago, maybe not individually, but as a town. We had a skate park for the kids. We paid money for that, one form or another, for the kids to go up there and do something. You want to provide a quality of life. That's part of the quality of life. I think that every time they ask for a piece of equipment, I keep hearing, close it down, close it down. That's something we should keep going. That's something we have to invest in. We have a large amount of money invested into that. Yes, it could be money, make money if it was run slightly different. The concession stand is a cornerstone to that golf course, believe it or not, because after you play golf, you want to sit back, relax, and you want to discuss whatever. If you improve that, it can make money. I'm going to vote for the mower.
Mr. Curtin.
Both of them.
Jim Curtin, Precinct 4, move the question.
It's a cut-off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, I say we cut off debate. Now, on the motion, which is, I just, no, if you're not changing this, the motion is to change that 30,000 to 0. On the motion and this is only a majority vote.
Is this on the, we're voting on the motion right now?
Yes,
Just the tractor.
not the total motion, just, right. Item F, number 2, and we don't have, that's correct. So we don't have any problem. I'm going to get out a tally sheet just in case, or a piece of paper. On the, shouldn't have to have any standing count. All those in favor, now, wait a minute, Mr. Mo. That's right. In other words, a yes vote will change that to 0-0. If you vote no, it'll leave everything alone. Everybody understand that? All those in favor of the motion to zero out, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I will declare the motion is lost by a voice vote. And that was at 9:38. Now, Item G, Events Committee. Anyone to speak on that? If not, no one. Item H, Recreation. Any discussion on it? If not, we are now ready for the final motion, which is, now I'm going to ask town council something. All right? And just as, I hope it's not high tech, just to be sure we don't get into trouble. Or if we do, we can blame on town council. Mr. Fair, do we actually have to state the difference between the borrowed numbers and the amount of borrowing in this all-inclusive?
As Mr. Hill read the motion,
Right.
it's as written in the printed handout.
So we don't have to state the difference between the two? The amount of money we're borrowing? Because this will still require a 2/3 vote.
That's correct. It's going to require a 2/3 vote. But the motion is as stated at the top of the handout, with the addition of Mr. Hill added in as written in the printed handout, which is referencing these amounts and which ones are borrowing and which ones are not.
All right, so it's perfectly clear. If we still have a majority, but not a 2/3, all these things that don't involve borrowing will still be done.
If you don't have a 2/3, then the motion would fail.
Well,
If you have 2/3, the whole thing fails.
that's where I'm questioning whether because all of these transfers
You're voting it as one.
is one.
This article is going to get voted as one article.
One whole pack.
One whole pack. It's 2/3 vote.
All right. So anything that's done with free cash can't be done.
No, we're doing it as one.
Okay.
It's all
So we'll require a 2/3 vote. Just clarifying that with town council, that a 2/3 vote is necessary. All those in favor, please rise and the chairman will take account. I have. On the original motion, which I will restate it, just in case, and I'm going to summarize it, and that's transfer from available funds of free cash and/or borrow for the purchase as may be appropriate equipping of the capital outlay specified in the chart that was distributed with its corrections and with each line considered as a separate appropriation, and for those items where general borrowing is funding, the funding source, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow with said sums pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8, or any other action enabling, and to issue bonds and notes therefore. So that's why it's very important to, and as fully detailed, that's the summary. That's correct.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Chairman, take account. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 12. Please keep it down. Precinct 2. What? 12. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 16. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 10. Precinct 4. 4 is 16. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 15. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 13. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 13. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 4. All those opposed, please rise. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 0. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 0. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 2. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 0. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. 2 and 1. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 0. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 3.
4 and 3 is 7 plus 1, 99 and 7.
We now have an attendance count.
99 to 7 to 1.
The motion carries. 91 yes, 99.
99.
Okay. 99 yes, 7 no, 1 abstention. That is certainly more, 2 times the no. The motion is carried in its entirety. It is now 9:44.
Thank you very much, town meeting members.
I just want to there's always a little time where we try something new, and I think this is improved significantly. I just have to get all this stuff in so we don't lose it. Okay, that takes care of 38. What the heck is 39? Article 39. Article 39, Mr. Hill.
Town meeting electronic vote tabulation system, that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purchase or lease at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen of an electronic vote tabulation system for use by town's representative town meeting to include without limitation all hardware, software, services, training, and technical support, and all other incidental and related costs, and in connection therewith, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease or lease purchase agreement for a period of up to in excess of 3 years, as funding therefore $15,000 to be transferred from Article 34 of the town meeting of May 2010.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh.
Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. I did oppose this in my previous capacity. And it just seems to be a waste of money. Also, some of you may recall, we used to have a check-in clerk someone that was paid to check us in. My understanding of this system is each clicker is personalized, so that my clicker can't be used by one of you, so that when the votes are shown on the screen, the Walsh clicker shows next to the Walsh name. Now, that means that someone will have to give us our individual clicker, and then on the way out, someone will have to collect those clickers. So I don't imagine anyone here is going to volunteer to stick around at 10:30 at night and collect 168 clickers and make sure that that Cynthia Walsh turns hers in and that each of you turn yours in. I really don't think getting up and down from our seat, and I do have arthritic knees, is that much of an ordeal for us. This isn't the United States Senate, and we know that because it's actually working. Thank you.
As a point of personal privilege, this subject has been dealing with the Mass Moderators Association for over 10 years. And I have extensive notes, and there are still a lot of discussion on it. I have my own personal opinion on the machines. They are improving, but for a representative town meeting, you will it is personalized, but we have to keep accurate account. There has to be technicians, and the machines can be set to get a roll call vote, which is something that we have not done in this town meeting since 2 years before I became a town meeting member. A roll call vote means that your name is identified how you vote. This is the way they do in the State House. However, those clickers don't do it for every vote unless it is requested by the body to be a roll call vote. That is a very expedient thing to do, and I'll leave it at that with these machines. The equipment has come a long way in 10 years. And the last meeting I attended on this subject was 2 months ago with a very, very well-experienced person that their town has done this as an open town meeting. And I highly recommend that we see demonstrations rather than go by my personal opinion as the moderator. It's something that you can look at, but it's up to your decision. I think it should give a fair trial one way or the other, but that's at this point. And those are my personal comments. Mr. Coleman. Yes. Mr. Coleman or Steph?
Stephanie can go first to answer the question. I'll defer.
Yes, Ms. Summers.
I also just wanted to mention that these can be used for more than just town meeting. They have applications that are actually being used now by other town clerks for not only check-in, but also for check-in at elections in the future, and there's a possibility in the near future that the Elections Division in Boston will actually allow these to be used as voter check-in lists. So instead of going to the polls and having to wait while someone actually flips through 100 different pages, they can find you, check you in, and you can be on your way within a few seconds as opposed to waiting in the long, long lines. So this does have more applications than just simply town meeting. It can be used for a few other things. And also something that is very true, used by other town clerks, while it is identifiable to be roll call, it can very easily be done so that you don't know what your neighbor is voting for. So it's something to consider as well, the anonymity. Many of you may not care, but occasionally if there's something contentious and you are a little nervous about voting a different way because you don't know how people are going to feel about it, sometimes anonymity is nice as well.
Mr. Coleman? All right. Mrs. Carrara?
Thank you. Stephanie Carrara, Precinct 2. I had the privilege of getting invited to the
moderators meeting to listen to all the information that the town of Wayland was presenting on this particular Saturday. And I just want to say I am for this, but I am not for buying it. I'm for renting it because, opposite. I am for buying it and not renting it because it will cost a substantial amount of money. I know that people are probably concerned about other people knowing how they vote. It's not like that. When you get up and just vote for a regular article, you hit in yes or no, and then it would be posted on the projector, and we wouldn't have to wait as long for roll call when we stand up to vote. I would really hope that you all really think about this, because I think this is going to help town meeting go a little bit faster, which I think we all would like. And I think it is a good investment for the town. For right now, I think it'd just be good for town meeting. Eventually, if they ever get advanced down the road for elections, that's at another time. But I just think right now this is what we should be really looking into. Other local towns, surrounding towns are going for it. And we don't want to be behind the 8 ball like sometimes we are. Thank you.
Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. I'm very much in favor of this. I think it will expedite things. But I have a question on the recommendation. We're being asked for $15,000 for a period of up to or in excess of 3 years. So, are we spending $15,000 per year? Are we getting 3 years for $15,000? I'm unclear, unsure.
Mr. Recupero.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the previous speaker. I think, and the town manager can correct me, I drafted this article, and you'll note that the language says to purchase or lease. We can't enter into a lease agreement for more than 3 years. I think that's correct, right? That's the 3-year period. The reason why it's purchase or lease is because you actually pay per town meeting session. So if we have 11 nights of town meeting, as we did last year, it's more expensive than if we have 3 nights of town meeting like we will this year. So that's the flexibility in it, and I generally agree with Mrs. Carrara that buying as opposed to leasing was a preference because of cost, but technology being what it is, I'd also like to take advantage of new. So the answer to the question is 3 years ties into the maximum amount of number of years we can enter into on a lease.
So for 1 year, we can go up to $15,000.
Oh no, that's a full appropriation. That's 3 years, full appropriation. We'd have to come back to you for more if the lease were more.
So the most we can spend for 3 years would be a total of $15,000 or $5,000 per year on average.
Or we'd have to come back. Let me put this in perspective. I priced it out before I put in $15,000, and actually the number that I put in was $10,000 because it would be far less than 15 under the pricing structure that I saw for the number of town meeting members we had. If we wanted to purchase a system, it would be far less than $15,000. I think leasing would be even less than that if we had 4 or 5 nights of town meeting per year for the next 3 years.
I ask again, for 3 years, will we be spending more than $15,000?
Not without another vote of town meeting.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Fallon.
Hello, James Fallon, Precinct 1. The only question that I have is, would I, myself, coming in late, disrupt the thing with those clickers, or anybody else that has to work and can't make it?
No, the town clerk and assistant town clerk may be able to speak to this better than I can, but I did do quite a bit of research with companies that do these, and actually the Wayland company was one that I spoke with. Very professional. They come out here, they sit with you until you're well established with the system, and check-in will be hi, you're here, here's your paddle or your clicker. You sit down and that's your check-in you have with your paddle in hand. And then up on the screen, you'd see a tally, which you can break down into names, but you don't necessarily need to. And I don't suspect it would take very long to do. And with someone coming in late, there would be a paddle waiting for you when you show up.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Blacker?
Hi, so I'm confused. So we can buy these for $15,000, or do we pay a service fee, or?
The systems that I looked at were you could purchase those for well under $15,000.
Okay, so, but if we purchased it for X amount, whatever that is, we own them, we don't pay any more money, we don't pay, because you were talking about per meeting, that's only if we lease them that you're talking about per meeting. If we buy them,
Right.
we could have one meeting, whatever, and that's it.
Right. If you purchase them, the company comes out, they set you up, and they'll actually come to town meeting and work with you to establish, some sort of system with your new system. And then you've purchased the system until you want to appropriate money to purchase a new system. And if you lease it, the benefits of leasing is the equipment is upgradable I mean, we won't be appropriating money every 3 years for a system. We'll just be leasing it every year. But the $15,000 would cover, by my estimation, would cover leasing for a 3-year period also.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Anzavino?
Barbara Ansvino, Precinct 4. I just have one quick question. How are we going to get this system? Is the Board of Selectmen going to look at it? Are you going to have like a trial? Will different vendors come in? Will town meeting be involved? How will we get this system?
I think that's an excellent question because it brings into a different issue, is that town meeting will have to adopt other procedures, how you're going to check in people. The way Wayland did it, I believe, is they had a committee on technology for their town meeting, and they all met, they established rules, specific rules as to how they were going to hand them out, collect them, and so I suspect the Board of Selectmen may want to entertain some sort of committee for the purposes of handing them out, but the purchasing, my guess is it would go through the normal procurement process that we would.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Elliot Hanson?
Ms. Anzavino asked my question, Mr. Cooper answered it. Thank you.
Mr. Terry?
Richard Terry, Precinct 6. To the previous speaker, with any hardware and software product, if we purchase it, were you able to ascertain what type of hardware upgrades and software support fees will be expected in year 1 or year 3 or year 5?
I didn't go that far into it, to be honest with you. I looked into the purchase of a system. I'll be honest, I looked into the purchase of a system because I was figuring 11, 12 nights of town meeting, we couldn't really afford the leasing prices for that. So I looked solely into purchasing, but if we had a more manageable town meeting, we would be able to investigate leasing a little bit better. But to your question, the $15,000, and it was more like $8,000 or $9,000 for a full package, and that was about 180 clickers, full package of the hardware we need, the software we need, and that didn't include any upgrades. I imagine we'd have to purchase those separately, but that was just for a fully integrated package for whatever we purchase at that point. Did that answer it?
Any further discussion? Mr. Lute? Oh, I thought he was, did I, right on the blackboard. There being no further discussion, anybody want to call the cutoff debate?
Why do you have to move it? There's no one to get it.
I heard the motion to move the previous question. I heard the second. On the motion to cut off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries to cut off debate. On the motion, which is the town to appropriate the sum of $15,000 for electronic voting tabulation system as described in the warrant, and $15,000 to be transferred. This only requires a majority vote. So if there's no doubt in my mind, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. There's doubt in my mind. All those in favor, please rise. The chairman take account. All those in favor say aye.
If we had a voter tabulation system, it wouldn't be a problem.
Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 9. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 11. Please. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 3. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 10. Precinct 5.
According to my calculator, 8.
Precinct 5 is 8. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 12. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 12. Precinct 8. 8 is 5. Precinct on the nose, please rise. Precinct 1.
2.
Precinct 1 is 2. Precinct 2. 3. Precinct 2 is 3. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 9. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 3. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 4. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 2. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 2. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 2. The motion carries 70 yes, 27 no. I got it by 4. Yeah. Okay. Article 40, windows and doors for the West School. Mr. Hill.
That the town appropriate the amount of $2,275,000 for the purpose of paying costs of the replacement of existing windows and door assemblies and associated components at the West Elementary School, 1322 Central Street, Stoughton, Mass., as printed in the warrant.
Second. Do we have anybody from the school department? Superintendent Rizzi? Dr. Rizzi? When you're going to spend this kind of money, I at least want to make everybody sure that Mr. Harding, I'm asking for a presentation.
No presentations.
I recognize Dr. Rizzi to explain this on behalf of town meeting.
The town did a plan a couple of years ago, about 5 years ago now, and analyzed all of the facilities. And our committee on facilities and a facilities master plan has been recommending projects and articles for them based on the need as it was outlined in that plan. And the next set of windows to be replaced in the plan, we've done a number of schools now, the Hanson and the Dog got done this year. The next town in the plan was the West. We will be partnering with the MSBA to do these windows, so there will be reimbursement from the state. And the windows are outmoded and of a very old style in terms of material and so forth. And it's time for new ones. That's the next school in the list.
Mr. Flynn.
Joe Flynn, Precinct 7, also a previous member of the West Elementary School School Council. Back in 1995, this was one of our recommendations to replace the window. That's correct, 20 years ago. If you sit in those classrooms, December, January, and February, the cold air literally blows through those windows. You can hear the street traffic. You can hear the playground out back, sitting in the middle of that building. It's deplorable, the windows. And I don't know about the doors, but the windows are horrible. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murphy, before I accept that motion. Oh, I can't read your mind.
Couldn't see that one coming.
On the motion to cut off debate, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As this is a borrowing article, it does require a 2/3 vote. If it's not unanimous, I will have to take a standing count. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, it is unanimous.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Hill.
can I make a motion to consider Articles 41 and 42 together?
I suppose. It isn't that. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm just going to
On
make
the
a final
motion to
Go ahead.
Suspend the rules and take Articles 41 and 42 together. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, 41 and 42.
And
Mr.
I'd like
Hill.
to make, and I'd like to make a motion. It can get seconded and then discussed. Like a message, like to make a motion to defer these to the end of town meeting.
Till the last, till after we've done 48. All right, why don't you just table them to?
I'd be happy to amend that to table them until the end of town meeting,
Till
till after Article 48.
After 48.
Actually, is it after Article 48 or after Article 2?
I would rather take it.
After Article 48.
48.
Yeah.
All those in favor of tabling till after Article 48?
Both.
Both. After Article 48. I'm just going to mark this thing table and table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare that a 2/3 vote. Fine. The bookkeeping is more than the effort. What time you got? Article 43, Mr. Hill.
That the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $50,000 to fund mitigation and management of exotic and non-exotic invasive aquatic weeds and eutrophic conditions in Ames Ponds located at West Street, Lake Drive, and Highland Street in the southwest portion of the town for fiscal year 2016, including all incidental and related costs.
Any discussion? Mr. Murphy.
I have been waiting for this article for years. I have spoken before about the aqua rakes that they wanted the town to purchase. I have firsthand knowledge of this milfoil and other vegetation that once you start cutting it up, it just keeps growing and growing. This is the proper way to treat that. $50,000, I said at the public meeting, this is just a start. Because what happens is you have to keep maintaining this. It's money well spent. As you go along these different ponds, lakes, you see them starting to close in more and more. If you don't do anything about them, you will lose them. You will lose your water supply. This is money well spent. And I said to the presenter when he brought it up, I hope next year he brings another article for $100,000, and I will support that. Because if you look at the lakes and ponds around here, they're getting swallowed up. This is money well spent. The other thing that I asked is that they form a committee. And the committee people to volunteer to help watch after this. Because you want people involved. We just bought Glen Echo. You want to open that up. You want people to use it. There should be groups that volunteer, and I'd be one of the first ones to volunteer, to work with this group and stay on top of this. I'm voting for this article. Thank you.
Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. Question through you to the town manager. Ames Pond goes into Easton. Was there any discussion to see if Easton wanted to help out?
Mr. Hartman.
I believe Easton has their own program, and in speaking with J.C. Conlon, I believe that our program will be coordinated with theirs.
Oh, good. So they're, do you know how much they're putting into this as well?
Again, the 50K is just for our portion of the pond.
Right.
I don't have direct knowledge as to how much they're putting into it.
Well, that's a good thing. Thank you.
Mr. Ventresco, you were there before.
I'm going to say back 10 years ago, when they first decided to give Ames Pond a haircut, I was against it, and I brought in information about chemicals to control the weeds, and I was like the demon from hell. Everybody said, oh, Jesus, chemicals in a pond. Now here we are 10 years later, and we want to use chemicals. I'm for the chemicals, but when I first brought that article, the literature here for chemicals 10 years ago, the town of Lynn's been doing it for years, but it's an association. People live around a pond, pay for the chemicals to upkeep the pond. The last time we were going to, there was an article a few years back to buy the hair cutting machine for the weeds, but then it got pulled. I located a pond in Mendon, and the same thing. It cost them $800 a year to do a 10-acre pond. Now, I don't know how many acres Ames Pond is. Does anybody know that? Because 50,000, maybe it's a little too much, maybe it's not enough. But I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about Ames's Pond all the time. All these ponds we do is on town lines. When we have ponds more centralized to the town of Stoughton, like well, Harris is true, but the old ice house, that's, I don't know if you people know what that pond is, but it's right next to...
How about Glen Echo?
Glen Echo's near Randolph and Canton. Pratt's Court Well. That water, that pond is continually fed by Muddy Pond, which is our original water supply, so it's got fresh water running down there all the time. That, to me, if the town is going to pay to take care of Ames's, that I want all these ponds in the town to be treated. Otherwise, I'm going to vote this article. Me, myself, I'm going to vote against it. Because these other ponds centrally located make more sense to me. And the ice house, the town owns, I don't know how many acres of land that was donated to them by the Murphy family, that it's all sand, clay mixed sand. So it'd be a beautiful area for a park, for a beach, and it's centrally located. So I'm hoping we look into doing more ponds. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice.
Yeah, I remember, as Peter said, what happened there a few years back. But anyway, I want to agree with Peter. I think that there are some other ponds, this should be done, there's no question, but there's some other ponds that are more worthy than Ames Pond in the sense that they're in more dire straits. Ames Pond is nothing compared to the problem we have. I know it's West Stoughton and not West Street, but Harris's Pond really needs some work. you could probably almost walk across. I know people that go fishing there, they'll fish in the spring, prior spring, and then that's it. That's the season, the fishing season is over there. That, I think, should be the first priority. Ames's Pond is nowhere in the dire condition that that pond is. Also, the previous speaker mentioned that you can lose your ponds. And for some of us who have been around for a while, there used to be a pond on Mill Street. And that pond, excuse me?
Yes, you are talking about Ames Pond, but he does have,
Well, I'm making a,
he would like to make a comparison that we do have other ponds, and I think that is well enough stated.
the point that I was making is on a previous speaker, I think the first speaker mentioned how you could lose the ponds, and I just wanted to point out the fact that for the people that have been around a while will realize that we had a pond on Mill Street called Mill Pond. That pond does not exist anymore. So as the previous speaker mentioned, yes, you can, I think it's called eutrophication. I'll put that off to Mr. Martin on that, but if I remember that's the correct terminology. So it's a reality. So this is something we should be doing, and if Ames has to be the first, and we definitely should be doing all of them. Thank you.
Mr. Morton.
John Morton, Precinct 3. I complimented that the previous speaker pointed it to me and said, eutrophication. And I am eutrifying. The natural course of a pond is to become a swamp and then to become a field. If we do nothing, that will happen. Some environmentalists say let nature take its course. If nature takes its course, we'll lose all our ponds, we'll lose all our fresh water, and we won't be around much longer. So my view of conservation is we protect the things that keep us well. If you want to see a live example of a pond that has eutrophied, go down Sumner Street, take a right, heading toward Easton, and onto Union Street, and you'll see a pond there. In late August, you can walk across that field that this time of year is a pond. That's happening at Ames Pond. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. We had a meeting dedicated completely to the issue of restoring these ponds. The chemical that will be used is a chemical called Sonar. Sonar is a chemical that has been approved by both the federal government and Massachusetts, and it has been used widely throughout the country. It has not any demonstrated residual adverse effects. It is a pretty selective chemical that acts mostly on the invasive plants. If it kills the invasive plants, the native plants can come back. It is not a permanent fix. Ultimately, the invasive plants will come back simply because they're so invasive and there's so much of them. There's nothing we can do to kill them all. It takes time as well. So the chemicals would be applied in the pond, and it would take months before you began to see the plants begin to disappear. It's good for 3 to 5 years, and then it has to be repeated, because the only permanent way to eliminate the invasive plants is to do dredging. Dredging is a much more expensive process that requires preliminary studies. You have to study the siltation to make sure it's not toxic. You have to figure out how to get rid of the siltation. And even then, the invasive plants will come back because they are so pervasive throughout New England. They just return. The Conservation Commission has given this a lot of thought. We like to think a journey of 1,000 miles is started with a single step. There are a lot of ponds in this town that need to be treated. We want to do it on Ames Pond, and I point out especially the northern section of Ames Pond, the side away from Easton, is now almost solid plants, solid invasive plants after the 1st of July. It used to be wide open. We moved into this town in 1969. You could put a canoe on there and go anywhere all summer long. It's not that way now. So we want to begin the process of restoring our ponds, and we think because the beach is there, because most of the people in town, when they think of water sources and public access to water sources, focus on Ames Pond, that's the place to start. So I hope you'll support this and be ready to help us as we come back to you to do some of the other ponds. I will say one other thing. I'm also on the Community Preservation Committee. There is a growing body of law that says the community preservation funds can be used to
You
restore...
have about 1 minute left.
I'm sorry?
You have about 1 minute left.
Okay. Community preservation funds can be used to restore a pond, but not to maintain it. And we have to go to town council and ask the question, are we restoring a pond with the first application and maintaining it with subsequent, or are we always maintaining it? These are the complications of the Community Preservation Act, but I think we can begin to use them to some extent to restore some of the ponds that need restoration.
Mr. Linehan.
John Linehan, Precinct 1. I'll be real quick. We are losing all our ponds, and I agree with all the previous speakers that we can't just restrict it to this pond. I know we do for the means of this article, but in the future, and I do think we need to do some dredging. We're losing some great resources in this town that if we bring them back, it'll enhance the value of the town, give the kids more areas to utilize and stay off the streets, and so I support this.
Mr. Gito.
Ditto, and I think that you'd find that most people on West Street would support doing this for all of the ponds in town, not just one. And I think we should pass this. Goodbye.
Did I hear somebody say move the previous question? Second. That's right. Just in case somebody wants us. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. On the recommendation of the Finance Committee, which is the transfer for free cash, the sum of $50,000 for this article. All those as printed in the warrant. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, I declare it unanimous. A voice vote. And what time do we have? 10? Okay, on the motion to adjourn.
Adjourn to when?
We are now down to the point where the reserved articles that have been for next Monday, I'm going to suggest that we adjourn till next Monday. That's because there is only the other articles that have been committed, and people have been notified that we're doing those articles. That includes the Community Preservation Committee articles, Articles 47 and 48, and there's 2 more procedural articles. There's no sense of coming back here. Thank you. All in favor of adjourning till Monday?
Aye.
All those opposed, you can come Wednesday and I won't count. Adjourn.
Eric, when do you want to meet?